Chapter 704. Rumble. The soul-testing vitality stone trembled as if it was about to crack. It could not withstand the power of the soul. With Li Qingwei as the center, her robe and hair fluttered in the wind. She looked like a saintess. A soul storm swept out like a hurricane and shook the hall. At this moment, the entire Yuqian palace seemed to be shaking and rumbling. At this moment, the people in the examination hall were shocked to discover that the Yuan Qi in their bodies was blocked. The souls in their minds were throbbing, and from the depths of their souls, a kind of absolute reverence gushed out. They wanted to bow down and worship the young, graceful, and energetic figure. This was awe at the soul level. The soul had met the king of the soul. Bang, bang. In the hall, several young disciples' legs went soft and they knelt down. Their faces were pale, and their eyes were filled with shock and awe. Su Yi's eyes trembled. At this moment, under the power of the soul in his mind was also fluctuating. The heavenly origin demon soul rippled, as if it was attracted by something. The terrifying commotion was shocking, but it only lasted for a short while before it came to a sudden stop. It quietly dissipated and calmed down. A soul fluctuation also swept back into Li Qingwei's glabella. Above the central continent city, all the movements had just emerged. Compared to the movements caused by Gong Qianxing just now, this one lasted longer and was also bigger. It's the second time. What's going on? The wind blew away the clouds. Many people in Zhongzhou City were puzzled. They did not know what had happened. In the examination hall, the soul-testing vitality stone also calmed down. But Vice Palace Master Wanlan, Vice Palace Master Yunding, and Vice Palace Master Yinlu could not calm down for a long time. Li Qingwei opened her beautiful eyes. Her hair was loose, and there was a touch of charm in her beauty. She bowed to Vice Palace Master Wanlan and asked, "How was the result of the examination?" Hearing this, Elder Su Yun, by Ming Shan, and Jian Wanyan's eyes fell on Vice Palace Master Guanlan. G. Latest Chapter 1, Section 1-K. Although they had sensed the movement and knew what was going on, they were still waiting for Vice Palace Master Guanlan's final result. Beginner 3rd Grade Soul Controller. Half a step to Heaven Grade Soul. Under everyone's gaze, Vice Palace Master Guanlan took a deep breath and said the result with a shocked expression. Phew! When Vice Palace Master Guanlan's voice fell, there were several gasps in the hall. Bai Mingshan, Jian Wanyan, and the others were stunned. Half a step to Heaven Grade. Shi Wuqing's eyes were also filled with shock. He spoke softly, as if he was greatly shocked. Gong Qianxing's deep facial features changed a little. Half a step to Heaven Grade. That was comparable to the Heaven Grade. On the other hand, his quasi-heaven rank was only very close. The badge on her shoulder was bright gold. Comparing the two, it was in the shape of a triangle, was obviously superior. With 6 dazzling Zhao Chuan'an's face is not very good. The 7th lightning bolt originally thought that apart from Gong, it was more obvious than the 7th lightning bolt in the merciless West. He never thought that Blue Cloud Sect's half a step to Heaven Grade soul was so strong. Looking at Li Qingwei, Vice Palace, many of the disciples present were filled with admiration and reverence. Li Qingwei nodded. She was an existence that they could only look at. There was not much joy in her expression. It seemed that she was not satisfied. You are the real Heaven Grade Soul. The 14 or 15-year-old girl, prepared to inscribe the badge, was very happy. Vice Palace Master held her head high and was happy for her senior sister. Such a talented soul Li Qingwei glanced sideways, half a step into Heaven rank. When she passed by Su destined to surpass him. She smiled and nodded. Future. Her eyes were bright. It was a fortunate thing for him to be able to personally examine such a talented soul. He also nodded. Li Qingwei nodded and felt a little nervous for no reason. Congratulations, the 2 test results seem to be better than the Jian Wanyan congratulated Elder Su Yun. He was a young man. But in his heart, if the test results were not satisfactory, he originally thought it would be a little embarrassing. Gong Qianxing, let's move on to the next was the most talented after taking a deep breath. Vice Palace Master Li Qingwei suppressed his calmness on the testing Congratulations, platform and continued to test. The Blue Cloud Sect has Vice Palace Master Yunding Bai Mingshan also congratulated her. Yinlu were also waiting, but he was depressed in his heart. They seemed to want to wait for a while Shin sect tested a half a so as not to be interrupted again. And the Blue Cloud Sect interrupted twice in a row to Heaven Grade Soul. This made him feel ashamed. Elders, you're too polite.
Chapter
The Heavenly
705.
Shin sect
Haha.
and the Xinjiang
Seeing
Gate
Su,
are also
step
full
forward.
of talents.
I think this sacred
who was
martial
originally
assembly
unhappy
will be
in his
very
heart,
lively.
secretly raised
Elder
his
Su
eyebrows
Yun
and sneered.
said with a
Such
smile
kid
on her face,
who made him extremely
although a half-step
unhappy,
heavenly grade
was also
soul
being
wasn't a
tested
true
as a soul
heavenly
controller.
grade soul.
However,
it was still a rare
with two
sight.
talented
A
soul
real heaven
controllers
grade
in front of
soul
him,
would only
he was
appear
afraid that this
once
kid would
every
be
few
embarrassed
years.
in a while.
Just like the heaven grade talent, Zhao
It
Chuan
only
existed
existed
in
in
legends.
Although his
It was said that a
limelight had been
real
stolen,
heaven grade soul
how could this
was
brat in
almost
front of him be
destined
mentioned in
to
the
become
same
a powerhouse?
powerhouse as him?
If
This
this soul
arrogant
controller
brat
had a heaven
would
grade
lose
soul,
face in a while.
he would be able to dominate
No
the
need to be
world
nervous
and reach the
Do you have a
peak
sect?
in the future.
How old are you this year?
I think the blue
It's
cloud
convenient
sect will
to
evaluate
shine in
your
this
soul
sacred
quality.
martial
As Su
assembly.
Yi stepped forward and
Jian
stood on the
Wanyan
testing
said
platform,
with a hint of
Deputy
jealousy.
Palace Master
A soul
Guanlan
controller with a
also
heaven
showed a
grade
smile
soul
and
Li
asked
Qingwei was
softly and
also
gently.
a third-grade
It seemed that he was afraid
There was
that
no
the
doubt
test of
about
the
her
two
strength.
soul controller
The Heavenly
geniuses
Shin
in front
sect
would cause
is
great
also
pressure
very
on
strong.
Su Yi
They have
and
many
affect his
talents.
performance.
In the sacred martial
Bawang
assembly,
sects, Yi
they will
Su
be the
greets
center
senior.
of attention.
I'm 16 this
Elder
year.
Su Yun
Thank
said
you for your trouble.
with a sincere
Su
expression.
Yi bowed
She knew
respectfully,
Li
neither
Qingwei's
servile
strength
nor
and
overbearing.
she also tested
Su
a half a
Yi had a
step
very
to
good
heaven
impression
grade
of these
soul.
deputy palace
However,
masters.
the level of
And
the
Su
soul
Yi
could
did
not
not
hide his
completely
age.
prove one's
The test
combat
of
strength.
Gong
Gong
Qinxing
Qinxing
of the
of the
Heavenly
Heavenly
Shin
Shin
sect
gives
was
Su
also a
Yi a lot of
third-grade
pressure.
beginner soul
Age would
controller.
undoubtedly
Their
affect
real
the
combat
quality of
strength
one's
was
soul.
still unknown.
And Su Yi didn't
Not to
want the
mention
results
that
to
there
be
might
too
be other
humiliating.
extraordinary talents
Only
in other
16.
forces.
After a
Hearing
round
this,
of pleasantries,
the eyes of the people
Li
present were a
Qingwei's
little
badge was
surprised.
also engraved.
Su Yi's disguise
She walked
technique
down from the
made
testing
him look
platform.
18 or 19 years old. Hearing that Su Yi was only 16, the people could not help but be a little surprised. However, some people were born to look more mature, so no one would suspect much. This kind of test, presumably, no one would deliberately hide it. It was easy to detect the cultivation time on the soul testing stone. It was difficult to deliberately hide one's age. During the testing process, relax. Don't have any pressure. Let's start the test now. Vice Palace Master Guanlan nodded. He seemed to be taking great care of Su Yi for the sake of Merciless West. After giving some special instructions, he formed a handprint and began to continue the examination. Su Yi also secretly adjusted his state of mind. At this moment, there was no doubt that he was somewhat nervous. Back then, during the martial arts examination, Su Yi was qualified to be a handyman. Along the way, Su Yi had already proven with his own strength that his so-called talent for odd jobs was not below that of any other genius. However, this soul examination also made Su Yi nervous. Voila! Above the soul testing yuan stone, light began to spread out. The dazzling light eventually enveloped Su Yi like a cocoon of light. Under the dazzling light, Su Yi was unable to look straight at it and closed his eyes tightly. At this moment, everyone in the hall cast their curious gazes over. After all, apart from Su Yi, everyone present was a disciple of the three major factions. Everyone was very curious about this disciple of the Bawang sect, whom they had never heard of outside of the three major factions. They did not know what kind of soul quality this soul controller had. Merciless West and Green Emperor also paid attention to Su Yi. Merciless West, in particular, narrowed her eyes secretly and seemed a little nervous. Merciless West knew that Su Yi's soul was not simple and was different from others. However, she did not know what kind of soul quality Su Yi had. Wrapped in a cocoon of light, within the soul-testing yuan stone, a wisp of invisible fluctuation quietly spread to the space between Su Yi's eyebrows. Su Yi could clearly feel that this was a pure energy that directly poured into the space between his eyebrows and wanted to drill into his soul. With Vice Palace Master Guanlan's instructions and everyone else's examination, Su Yi relaxed. This energy did not seem to cause any harm to him. However, Su Yi was still a little worried. Would the mysterious space in his mind absorb the energy of the soul-testing yuan stone like it had absorbed the energy of the soul-testing yuan stone? However, this soul-testing yuan stone did not seem to be a simple yuan stone. Su Yi hoped that the mysterious space would not have any reaction. Otherwise, the examination would not be completed. Fortunately, when the energy poured into the space between his eyebrows, the mysterious space did not react. Su Yi secretly heaved a sigh of relief. The energy that poured into the space between his eyebrows was very gentle and carried a hypnotic energy. It then slowly spread into the sea of Su Yi's soul. At this moment, only Su Yi could feel the energy of the soul testing Yuan's stone spreading in his mind and soul. It was indescribably pleasant. It was like a spring breeze that made him feel drowsy. Our most percent new chapter G upper section eat this moment. Su Yi's soul began to fluctuate in his mind. The faint red soul seemed to undulate, slowly moving. The space in Su Yi's mind was a space formed purely by soul power. His soul power was like a surging wave. As the energy of the soul testing Yuan's stone spread, it was like a small stone had suddenly been thrown into a calm water surface, creating layers of ripples. However, Su Yi's soul, only had a layer of ripples. There was not much of a reaction. In the examination hall, many people were watching. Even Vice Palace Master Yun Ding and Vice Palace Master Yin Lu were very attentive. They were guessing whether or not another genius would appear. After all, the person accompanying him was a soul controller expert. Perhaps the person he brought with him would not be simple. Unfortunately, the soul testing Yuan stone did not have much of a reaction for a long time. Under the cocoon of light, Su Yi's eyes were slightly closed. His expression was normal. Everything was very calm. There was no superfluous reaction. 10 breaths, 20 breaths. After a long while, there was still no reaction from the soul testing Yuan stone under everyone's gaze. Vice Palace Master Yun Ding and Vice Palace Master Yin Lu, who had been secretly anticipating the outcome, gradually faded. It seemed that everything was a foregone conclusion. This Isu of the Bawang sect, although he was a soul controller, seemed to be very ordinary. He could not even pass the examination of the Imperial Palace. Merciless West was also very surprised by such a scene. He was puzzled. Based on his intuition, Su Yi's soul was definitely not ordinary. Haha, you overestimate yourself. You can't come to the Imperial Palace to participate in the examination of the Imperial Palace. Jian Wanyan's faint voice sounded. He did not hide his ridicule. He was not really ridiculing Su Yi. He was just a kid who was still wet behind the ears. He had not put him in his eyes. Jian Wanyan's ridicule was only directed at Merciless West. He was an elder of the heavenly, profound sect. Even if this person was an extraordinary soul controller. So what? Aha! Ba Mingshan smiled faintly. It seemed that not just anyone could participate in the examination of the Imperial Palace. Who's a cat or a dog? You think anyone can participate in the examination of the Imperial Palace? You overestimate yourself. Chapter 706. Vice Palace Master Guanlan was also very surprised. He thought that his eyes were a little sharp and felt that the young man called Isu had an unusual temperament. He was not ordinary, but why was he so ordinary that he could not even pass the basic soul controller test of the Imperial Palace? Could it be that he had made a mistake this time? But the truth was already in front of him. The soul testing Yuan stone did not move at all, and there was not even any extra reaction. The truth was already in front of Vice Palace Master Guanlan. The young man in front of him might not be simple in other aspects, but the quality of his soul was indeed ordinary. This kind of ordinariness might be considered a genius to ordinary martial artists. After all, he was a soul controller. But to the Imperial Palace, he was a soul controller who was not very qualified. Secretly feeling a little regretful, Vice Palace Master Guanlan sighed softly in his heart. He withdrew his hand seals and began to stop. There was no need to continue the test. Let's continue, Vice Palace Master Yun Ding and Vice Palace Master Yin Lu said, and began to prepare to continue the test on the young disciples of the heavenly Xian sect in front of them. As Vice Palace Master Guanlan withdrew his hand seals, the light in his palm dissipated and returned to calmness. Could it be that he is really ordinary? Merciless West frowned slightly. Could it be that the young man's soul was really ordinary? The test of the Imperial Palace would never be wrong. All right, Vice Palace Master Guanlan began. Everything was set. 2 genius soul controllers were tested today, but there were also people who could not even pass the basic test. This was fate. Suddenly, Vice Palace Master Guanlan's face became extremely surprised. His gaze suddenly changed as he stared at the soul-testing origin stone in front of him. He had already stopped the test on the young man, but the soul-testing yuan stone in front of him was still shining brightly. An invisible wave of energy continued to surge into the young man's glabella. Vice Palace Master Yin Lu and Vice Palace Master Yin Ding, who were about to start the test on the young alchemist and weapon refiner in front of them, also noticed this abnormal reaction. Their gazes, which had just moved away, fell on Su Yi again. Walala! At this moment, an unending stream of invisible energy was flowing from the soul measuring stone into Su Yi's glabella. As if it was being pulled by some kind of force, the invisible energy became stronger and stronger, causing the light on the soul-testing stone to become more and more dazzling. Boom! All of a sudden, the soul-measuring stone shuddered. Immediately, a dazzling light that was more dazzling than the one used to test Gong Qianxing and Li Qingwei erupted from the soul-testing stone. It was like a bright sun in the sky, bursting with dazzling brilliance and directly enveloping Su Yi. An enormous amount of invisible energy, similar to the compressed energy on the soul origin stone, suddenly erupted and rushed into Su Yi's forehead. This sudden scene caused the originally mocking gazes in the entire examination hall to once again turn into surprise and doubt. In Su Yi's mind, the spiritual ripple, which was originally merely a ripple, finally appeared to have been thrown into a water mine following the impact of the enormous energy. It immediately surged apart, forming a ripple. Walala! From Su Yi's soul, there was an enormous pressure which contained both destruction and majesty, spreading out at the same time. This aura, which contained both destruction and majesty, originated from the depths of Su Yi's soul, from the heavenly Yuan demon soul. Boom! The soul in Su Yi's mind was no longer calm. Time and time again, spiritual waves rose from afar like waves, surging apart. Most in new, chapter, section P$J, within the energy of the soul-testing stone, there was an invisible energy that was being pulled, spreading into Su Yi's soul. This caused a bright scarlet light to erupt from Su Yi's soul. At this moment, a beast figure vaguely appeared from the depths of Su Yi's soul. From afar, it looked like an ancient giant god had traversed through time and space, traversing across space and time. It emitted a monstrous pressure that rumbled unceasingly within the spiritual sea, causing the spiritual pressure to surge and become increasingly terrifying. The scarlet light undulated and surged within Su Yi's mind, shaking the surroundings. Multicolored light appeared resplendent, like a small sun, dazzling and resplendent. Walala! In an instant, the aura from Su Yi's mind undulated like ripples. A domineering and majestic aura, as if it could suppress the ancient times and look down on the world. In Su Yi's mind, the heavenly Yuan demon soul was completely triggered and erupted. It was as dazzling as the sun, and a divine radiance spread out, emitting waves of fluctuations. Finally, from between Su Yi's eyebrows, a scarlet light, like a bright scarlet lightning, swept out and drilled into the soul-testing stone, connecting with it. At this moment, it was as if a mysterious force had traversed through time and space, descending from the ancient times and emitting bursts of thunder in the hall. Roar! And when the scarlet, lightning-like soul force swept out from between Su Yi's eyebrows, a monstrous light erupted from the soul-testing stone, and a series of beast roars sounded like thunder. Boom! At the same time, the entire imperial palace trembled, and the outside of the window immediately fell into darkness. Only the soul-testing stone shone resplendently, like a resplendent sun in the sky. Rumble! With the imperial palace as the center, the world once again fell into darkness, and it quickly spread to the entire central state city. For no reason, a thunderous sound broke through the sky and caused the entire central state city to rumble, shaking the void with a rumbling sound. Zizi! Suddenly, the void above the imperial palace trembled for no reason, and thick black clouds covered the sky. From the depths of the black clouds, there were faint flashes of lightning shuttling back and forth, and the rumbling sound of thunder spread out from the depths of the black clouds. In an instant, it enveloped the entire Central State City, shaking the world. A powerful aura swept through the entire Central State City, and for no reason, it made people's hair stand on end. Under the vast aura, it made people feel as if the depths of their soul were trembling. What's going on at this moment in the entire Central State City? Everyone was stupefied. This scene was too terrifying, and the world was changing color because of it. Strange phenomenon. Is this a strange phenomenon of heaven and earth? In the entire Central State City, countless experts gathered at this moment, and many of them were experienced and knowledgeable. They cried out in alarm. This was a strange phenomenon of heaven and earth. Sinister gazes immediately looked towards the direction of the Imperial Palace, and they felt that the source of the terrifying aura was precisely the Imperial Palace. So, from all over the Central State City, suddenly, one after another, obscure auras rushed into the sky, and suddenly stopped near the Imperial Palace. The previous 2 times when heaven and earth changed color, it disappeared in an instant and didn't stay for long. But this time, it was a true strange phenomenon of heaven and earth. Above the Central State City, black clouds shrouded and lightning shuttled back and forth. The entire Central State City fell into darkness, and a vast aura descended. In the examination hall, within the cocoon of light, Su-Yi was connected to the soul testing stone, and the space between his eyebrows shone. From Su-Yi's body, a wave of destructive aura spread out, and there was a faint sound of wind and thunder whistling through his body. Ow! Chapter 707. Inside the examination hall, everyone was stupefied. All of them were overwhelmed with shock. Vice Palace Master Wanlan, Yin Ding, Yin Lu, Elder Su Yun, Bai Mingshan, and Jian Wanyan were all stunned, as if they were struck by lightning. Merciless West and Green Emperor's expression also changed. They were stupefied. This kind of disturbance was too great compared to the disturbance caused by Gong Qianxing and Li Qingwei. It was completely child's play. Rumble, the sky above Central State City rumbled, dark clouds rolled, lightning shuttled back and forth. Everyone was trembling. This aura was too terrifying. It made their souls shiver, their hearts palpitate. Swoosh, swoosh. In a certain area of Central State City, a figure rushed into the sky, stepping on a low altitude, gazing at the distant heavenly command palace that was the source of this terrifying disturbance. Oh, suddenly, from the depths of heavenly command palace, dark clouds rolled, lightning shuttled back and forth. A vicious beast's shadow suddenly appeared, roaring like thunder. An azure dragon's shadow traversed the vast sky. The dragon soared into the 9 provinces, as if it passed through the archaic era, descending into the present world. A divine sparrow's shadow spread its wings for several days, gorgeous, enormous, covering half of the heavens, raging flames dyeing the heaven and earth. A white tiger roared, about to pounce, tearing apart the heaven and earth, descending from the archaic era. A black tortoise coiled, a tortoise and a snake intertwined, supporting the sky, spanning across the heavens. This was too shocking. There was an azure dragon, a white tiger, a divine sparrow, a black tortoise. It was as if a corner of the archaic era had appeared in the present world. The heaven and earth were shaking. The wind rose, and the clouds surged. The entire Central State City was shaking violently at this moment. Dark clouds rolled, lightning flashed, thunder rolled. Divine birds moved through the heavens. Divine beasts looked down on the heavens. Divine birds and divine beasts descended one after another, bringing with them an incomparably terrifying aura, blurring the entire heaven and earth. Everyone was trembling with fear, kneeling down and prostrating themselves in worship. This aura was too terrifying. No one could resist it. Heavens, what is going on? Inside and outside Central State City, countless people raised their eyes and cried out in alarm. Above the sky, the clouds surged. Heaven and earth changed color. The terrifying pressure was impressive, making all living things want to prostrate themselves in worship. Heaven and earth anomaly. This is heaven and earth anomaly. Someone spoke up. His eyes were filled with shock, and his heart was unable to calm down. In a simple stone room in the depths of Heavenly Drive Palace, an old figure suddenly woke up with a start. His expression changed greatly as he closed his eyes. Soul ripples spread out from his forehead. In just a short moment, the old man opened his eyes. His face was filled with shock, and he was unable to calm down. He could not help but mutter to himself, "There really is such a soul in this world." Awoo! In the examination hall, the azure dragon, the white tiger, and the black tortoise appeared within the soul-measuring origin stone. Their terrifying auras swept out in all directions and connected with Su Yi. At this moment, Su Yi's eyes were tightly closed. The divine ring around him was fluctuating, carrying a destructive aura. It emitted an incomparably tyrannical destructive pressure. It was so terrifying that it overflowed into the sky, causing everyone present to tremble uneasily. Everyone felt an incomparable terror in their hearts. What a powerful pressure! I can't resist it. Some people couldn't help but feel their legs go soft. More importantly, the pressure came from their souls, causing them to kneel on the ground. 1, 2, 3. Immediately, one figure after another knelt down, their eyes filled with terror. Inside and outside of Heavenly Drive Palace, many figures also knelt down, inexplicably terrified. Inside the examination hall, everyone stared at Su Yi, completely flabbergasted at this moment. Too terrifying. Jian Wan Yin by Ming Shan and the others could still compose themselves, but at this moment, they were all dumbstruck, their faces turning pale with fright. Yin Ding, Guanlan, and Yin Lu, the three vice palace lords, were also dumbstruck after seeing the commotion caused by Su Yi. Their faces were filled with astonishment. Su Yi seemed to be unaware of all this. He only felt his soul rippling. Su Yi's robe fluttered in the wind, and his divine ring enveloped him. Everyone stared at him, feeling as if they were facing a supreme being. His terrifying aura made him seem like the ruler of this world. Crack, crack. On the soul-testing vitality stone, dazzling lightning flashed, but at the same time, cracks spread out one after another. From Su Yi's body, a supreme, soul-like aura spread out rapidly, connecting with the soul-testing vitality stone. At this moment, from between Su Yi's eyebrows, the terrifying spiritual pressure spread out to the extreme, causing even by Ming Shan, Jian Wan Yin, Elder Su Yun, and the Green Emperor in the examination hall to turn pale, their souls trembling. Gong Qianxing and Li Qingwei, the two soul controllers with half-step and quasi-heaven-rank souls, were also trembling at this moment. They retreated, unable to resist. This pressure was irresistible, coming from the depths of their souls. Bang! Finally, the cracks on the soul-testing vitality stone completely cracked, and then, with a loud bang, it exploded into pieces. Dazzling light and a shocking aura spread out from the ninth heaven, causing the entire hall to tremble. The soul-measuring stone exploded, and the invisible energy came to an abrupt stop, dissipating from Su Yi's glabella. Everything gradually calmed down. Su Yi's aura suddenly stagnated and slowly dissipated. TG, inside and outside of Central Continent City, the wind and clouds surged, and the heaven and earth changed color phenomenon quietly dissipated. The dark clouds dispersed, and the shadows of the beasts disappeared. Everything returned to calm. The terrifying, oppressive aura also dissipated. Only then did the people kneeling on the ground stand up. Their faces were filled with shock. What's going on? Heaven and earth anomaly. What exactly happened? Sounds like it's coming from the heavenly palace. Did they find a genius? There was a lot of discussion, and many people immediately headed in the direction of the imperial palace. They're from the imperial heavenly palace. Quickly go and investigate. Within Central Continent City's various great powers, there were people who immediately set out, hurrying towards Heavenly Controller Palace. Hula, inside the examination hall, everything was in a mess, as if a hurricane had swept through. Everyone's gaze fell on Su-yi, whose eyes were still closed, and the shock in their hearts could not be calmed down for a long time. Especially Jian by Mingshan and Zhao Chuanan. The original sneer and ridicule on their faces was now completely replaced by shock. Looking at the situation, they also had a premonition that this Yi Su of the Bawang sect was a soul-controlling master who could not pass the examination. This kind of movement was far more powerful than that of Gong, Qianxing, and Li Qingwei. Huff! After a while, Su-yi finally opened his eyes. A red light flashed in his eyes, and then his eyes became clear and deep. He looked at everyone's expressions and the mess in the hall. He was very surprised, as if he didn't know what had happened. Chapter 708. Senior, did I pass the test? Su-yi looked at the astonished Vice Palace Master Guanlan and asked weakly. He didn't know if he had passed the test. Hearing this, Vice Palace Lord Guanlan came back to his senses. He exchanged glances with Vice Palace Lord Yin Lu and Vice Palace Lord Yun Ding before looking at Su-yi again. The shock in his eyes did not subside for a long time. He said, "Of course you passed the test, but the quality of your soul is what's wrong?" Su-yi's heart tightened. He looked at Vice Palace Master Guanlan and asked, "Was there something wrong with his soul?" "To tell you the truth, this old one has never seen the quality of your soul before. I have never tested such a powerful soul before. The level of the soul testing origin stone in Central Continent City's Heavenly Command Palace is limited. It seems like it can't withstand the quality of your soul." Vice Palace Lord Guanlan smiled bitterly. He had never seen such a level of soul before. Now that the soul-testing source stone had shattered, it was difficult to say what level the quality of the soul was at. Hearing that, Su-yi's face was suddenly a little stunned. He asked Vice Palace Master Guanlan, "Senior, did I pass the test or not?" "Of course you passed, but..." Vice Palace Lord Guanlan smiled bitterly. He paused slightly and looked at Su-yi. His expression was very gentle. He said, "However, I really can't say exactly what level the quality of your soul is at. Perhaps someone can tell you. Please come with me." "Where to?" Su-yi was also very helpless. He did not think that there would be no way to test the quality of his soul in the branch of the Heavenly Command Palace. "Don't worry, follow me and you'll know." Vice Palace Lord Guanlan said, "Go, I'll wait for you here." Merciless West's shock gradually subsided. Seeing this, she said to Su-yi, "All right." Su-yi heard this and nodded at Merciless West. This was a branch of the Heavenly Command Palace. Judging from a Vice Palace Lord's attitude, the Heavenly Command Palace would not make things difficult for him. He had never had any grievances with the Heavenly Command Palace. Seeing this, Vice Palace Lord Guanlan ignored the others and left the hall with Su-yi. This, by Mingshan, Jian, and Zhao Chuanan were dumbfounded. They were not idiots. How could they not see the attitude of the Heavenly Command Palace towards Su-yi? Vice Palace Lord Guanlan probably had something to say to him alone. Perhaps they wanted to rope him in. Looking at the expressions of Jian and the others, Xu Wuqing glanced at them indifferently with a faint smile on his face. He called the Green Emperor and said, "Let's go and look around. Let's wait for that guy outside." "Yes." The Green Emperor replied with an arrogant look on his face, after which the two of them waved their sleeves and left. At Bai Mingshan, Jian face did not look too good. The corner of his eyes twitched, especially Jian. His face was gloomy. Look, Z version E chapter E, section 1. Su-yi followed Vice Palace Lord Guanlan from the examination hall to the inner hall. He didn't know where to go, so he could only follow behind. Along the way, Vice Palace Lord Guanlan broke the silence and asked Su-yi curiously, "Little brother Yi-Su, who is your master?" "To be honest, I know a thing or two about the sects in the Central Continent, but I'm not familiar with the Bawang sect." "Could it be that the Bawang sect isn't in the Central Continent?" "Senior, my master has been living in seclusion in the mountains. The Bawang sect is just a small sect in the mountains. It has never come out, So you don't know about it. Su-yi replied and said that he had a master behind him. This also showed that he had someone behind him. Is that so? Vice Palace Master Guanlan's eyes flickered, half believing and half doubting, but he did not show it. He smiled slightly and said to Su, "You don't have to be so polite in the future. I'm a little older than little brother. If you think highly of me, just call me old brother." "I don't dare." Su-yi smiled bitterly. This was the Vice Palace Lord of the Yutian Palace in the Central Continent. Judging from the attitudes of Jian Wanyin and Bai Mingshan, this was a terrifying expert. He was definitely a giant. It wouldn't be good for him to be too casual. "You don't have to be so polite. Just call me elder brother in the future. Little brother's talent is outstanding. Your future is limitless. I'm afraid that I'll have to bask in your glory soon," Vice Palace Lord Guanlan said with a smile. His expression was very gentle. It was obvious that he was trying to get closer to Yi Shiwen. With his eyesight, how could he not see that such a young man had a limitless future? This, Su-yi was helpless. Since Vice Palace Lord Guanlan had already said this, it wouldn't be good to refuse. He smiled bitterly and said, "Then I'll be rude. I'll call Senior Elder Brother Guanlan from now on." "Good, this will make us seem closer," Vice Palace Lord Guanlan said with a smile. Su-yi smiled. In the Central Continent city, he didn't have anyone behind him. It would be good if he could get closer to Vice Palace Lord Guanlan. "Okay, we're almost there. There's someone waiting for little brother inside. Perhaps the person inside will have a more accurate judgment of little brother's soul quality." While speaking, an extremely quiet and simple courtyard appeared in front of them. Vice Palace Lord Guanlan pointed at the courtyard and said to Su-yi, "There was already someone waiting inside. May I ask Elder Brother Guanlan, who's inside?" Su-yi was very puzzled. He didn't know who was inside. From Vice Palace Lord Guanlan's attitude, it seemed that the person inside had a much higher status than Vice Palace Lord Guanlan. "Go in, you'll know." Vice Palace Lord Guanlan smiled, indicating that Su-yi didn't need to worry. Then, he turned and left. Su-yi was surprised, but it didn't seem like Vice Palace Lord Guanlan wanted to make things difficult for him. He didn't hesitate and walked into the courtyard. "Come in." As Su-yi entered the courtyard, an old voice entered Su-yi's ears. Su-yi's eyes moved. There was no doubt that the person inside the courtyard was definitely an expert. In the quiet courtyard, everything was very simple and modeled. Inside the courtyard, after walking through a short corridor, Su-yi came to a small hall. Inside the small hall, an aged figure was already waiting. He looked at Su-yi with a faint smile and said, "I never thought that this time, our Central Continent city's Yutian Palace would actually be able to detect such an extraordinary soul." Chapter 709. Greetings to Senior. Su-yi stepped forward and cupped his fists in greeting. This old man was gentle and benevolent, without any aura fluctuations from his body. However, with Su-yi's sharp soul force, it wasn't hard to tell that this old man wasn't simple. He was definitely a terrifying expert with unfathomable depths. "No need to be so polite. Let me introduce myself. Normally, people call me Guyue. I'm also the Palace Master of the Central Continent City's Heavenly Command Palace. Little brother, can you also introduce yourself to this old man?" Palace Master Guyue smiled faintly and asked Su-yi, "Greetings to Palace Master Guyue. This little one is Yi-su, from a nameless small sect, the Bawang sect." Su-yi bowed again. No wonder Palace Master Guanlan was so polite. It turned out that this was the Palace Master of the Central Continent City's Heavenly Command Palace. The Bawang sect. I'm afraid it won't be long before it won't be a nameless sect anymore. Maybe in a few days, the name of the Bawang sect will shake the Central Continent. Palace Master Guyue stared at Su-yi, sizing him up. Such a young man, with such a high quality of soul, had caused the heaven and earth anomaly, shaking the entire Middle Continent. It wouldn't take long for the news to spread throughout the Middle Continent. Palace Master Guyue is overpraising me. May I ask Palace Master Guyue, what level is this little one's soul quality? Su-yi directly asked. Palace Master Guanlan said that Palace Master Guyue knew about his soul quality. He was also very curious about his soul quality. The Central Continent City's soul-testing origin stone can't withstand Little Brother's soul quality. However, from the fact that Little Brother's soul can cause a heaven and earth phenomenon, it should at least be at the heaven rank. However, if you want to know the exact soul quality, I'm afraid you'll have to go to the Heavenly Command Palace to test it. Palace Master Gyue said with a serious expression. His eyes were filled with shock. Heaven rank soul quality. Central Continent City had never tested such a soul quality before. Heaven rank. He raised the corner of his mouth, revealing a little smile. Although he didn't know what the heaven rank meant, from the test of Li Qingwei and Gong Qianxing, the real heaven rank soul seemed to be very good. If Little Brother has the time, you can follow me to the headquarters of the Heavenly Command Palace. At that time, we should be able to test Little Brother Su's true soul quality. Palace Master Gyue looked at Su and said, "Is the headquarters of Heavenly Command Palace also in Central Continent City?" Su asked. If he could determine the true quality of the soul, he could make a trip there. The headquarters of the Heavenly Command Palace is not in the central region. From here to the headquarters of the Heavenly Command Palace, you need to use 2 spatial portals. You can reach there in 2 days. Palace Master Gyue said. So far, Su frowned. The distance was a little far. His purpose in coming to Central Continent City was to participate in the sacred martial assembly. You can go to the headquarters of the Heavenly Command Palace at any time. On behalf of the Heavenly Command Palace, I welcome Little Brother Su to the headquarters of the Heavenly Command Palace for the test. Elder Gyue seemed to have seen through Su Yi's thoughts. He smiled and said, "The sacred martial assembly is near. Little Brother can participate in the sacred martial assembly with peace of mind. With Little Brother's strength, you will definitely shine in the sacred martial assembly." This old man is also looking forward to Little Brother's name shaking Central Continent. Sacred martial assembly. Su secretly smiled bitterly. Only now did he remember that he hadn't registered for the sacred martial assembly. The city lord of Central Continent City was looking for him everywhere. Whether he could participate in the sacred martial assembly was still a question. Therefore, he came to the Heavenly Command Palace for the test. There is one more question that I need Little Brother's forgiveness for. Palace Master Gyue looked at Su with a bitter smile. Please speak, Palace Master Gyue. Su asked. Palace Master Gyue said, Little Brother's soul quality is at least of the heaven rank. However, the Heavenly Command Palace in Central Continent City doesn't have a heaven rank soul emblem. I'm afraid Little Brother will have to make a trip to the headquarters of the Heavenly Command Palace when the time comes. It will also be a good opportunity for you to retest your soul quality. No emblem. Su smiled bitterly. He originally thought that with the name of the Heavenly Command Palace, he would be able to participate in the sacred martial assembly. Who knew that the Heavenly Command Palace didn't have his emblem? %more x equals new f most in fast o above. Little Brother doesn't need to worry too much. Although the Heavenly Command Palace doesn't have a heaven rank soul emblem, Little Brother's record will be kept in the Heavenly Command Palace. In order to prove Little Brother's identity, Little Brother will first be given a half-step heaven rank soul emblem. However, you'll be able to enjoy all the benefits and resources of a heaven rank soul controller in the Heavenly Command Palace. As Palace Master Gyue's voice fell, a Heavenly Command Palace emblem appeared in his hand. It was a resplendent golden color with a triangular shape. He said, Little Brother has been tested as an early 3rd rank soul controller with a heaven rank soul quality. However, the Heavenly Command Palace only has a half-step heaven rank soul emblem. However, the record won't change. You'll need to drip blood on it and use your soul to engrave it. With this emblem, there will be many conveniences. Then I'll have to trouble Palace Master Gyue. Su was already very happy to have a replacement emblem. With the name of the Heavenly Command Palace, he wouldn't have to worry about Central Continent City's people making things difficult for him when he went to the Sacred Martial Assembly. Then let's begin. I'll engrave the emblem for Little Brother. Palace Master Gyue said with a smile. Su nodded. He had seen Li Qingwei, Gong Qianxing, Lu Xiaohu, and the others engraved their emblems. It wasn't complicated at all. It was similar to the emblem in the Xinjing Gate. After dripping blood on it and leaving a strand of soul power between his eyebrows, Palace Master Gyue personally engraved it. Su Yi received his own Heavenly Command Palace emblem. When the emblem was engraved, Su Yi felt an invisible connection with the emblem. Su Yi carefully looked at his emblem. It was exactly the same as Li Qingwei's emblem from the Blue Cloud sect. There was no difference at all. Looking at Su Yi, Palace Master Gyue's eyes secretly moved. He said, "I wonder if little brother is interested in joining the Heavenly Command Palace. With the Heavenly Command Palace's emblem, wouldn't I be considered a member of the Heavenly Command Palace?" Su Yi faintly smiled and put the emblem away. From the results of Li Qingwei and Gong Qianxing's test, it would cause a lot of commotion outside. It was better to keep a low profile. The reason he came to the Heavenly Command Palace was purely to smoothly participate in the sacred martial assembly. When I said join, I didn't mean to pass the test, but to truly join the Heavenly Command Palace. Palace Master Gyue faintly smiled and said to Su Yi, "Truly join?" Su Yi's eyes moved. He understood Palace Master Gyue's words. No wonder Vice Palace Master Guanlan brought him here alone. It turned out that the Heavenly Command Palace wanted him to truly join. Chapter 710. Pausing for a bit, Palace Master Gyue continued. It can be said that obtaining the resources of the Heavenly Palace is the dream of all soul controllers, alchemists, and blacksmiths. With the quality of Little Brother's soul, if you can officially join the Heavenly Palace, you will undoubtedly receive the greatest amount of support from the Heavenly Palace. You might even be able to receive the guidance of the secluded experts of the Heavenly Palace. With Little Brother's talent and soul, it's only a matter of time before you can dominate the world. Whether it's the Holy Mountain, Tai Ching sect, Infinite sect, Divine Tiger sect, or Sky Dragon sect, none of these top forces can provide you with such resources. Gyue looked at Su Yi and said seriously. His aged face was filled with anticipation. If such a young man could join the Imperial Heavenly Palace, it would be a great fortune for the Imperial Heavenly Palace. The reason why the Imperial Heavenly Palace was able to achieve its current status was because they had the best weaponsmiths, alchemists, and even soul controllers. These were the main reasons why the Imperial Heavenly Palace was able to achieve its current status. Su Yi narrowed his eyes. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't tempted. From Merciless West's words, as well as by Ming Shan, Jian Wanyin, and Elder Su Yun's attitude towards Command Palace, it wasn't hard for Su Yi to know just how powerful Command Palace was. Although Command Palace stood aloof from worldly affairs, Su Yi didn't doubt Command Palace Lord Gyue's words. Command Palace Lord Gyue's strength was on par with Sacred Mountain. If he could truly join Command Palace and receive the guidance of their strongest soul controller, he would be able to become a master in the shortest time possible. Su Yi couldn't refuse this kind of temptation. Palace Lord Gyue stared at Su Yi, waiting for Su Yi's answer. He knew very well what a heaven-ranked soul represented. It was worth Command Palace Lord Gyue using Hyjul's resources to rope him in. It wouldn't be long before this youth could become a core master of Command Palace. The reason why Command Palace was able to stand tall in the world was because of the new blood joining them. "Thank you for your kindness, Palace Lord Gyue, but I already have a master, so I can only thank you for your kindness." Su Yi bowed to Palace Lord Gyue. The reason why he could become a soul controller was all because of that mysterious master, because of the Command Heaven art. Although he didn't become a disciple of that master, and couldn't even help that master escape, in Su Yi's heart, that mysterious master was the reason why he could become a soul controller. Even if he wanted to join another school, he should at least let that mysterious master know. Truly joining Command Palace won't conflict with Little Brother's current school. Command Palace has always stood aloof from worldly affairs. But truly joining Command Palace will mean that you will have an additional layer of responsibility for Command Palace. This is also the reason why Command Palace has always been standing tall. Palace Lord Gyue said to Su Yi, "Thank you for your kindness, Palace Lord Gyue, but this matter is very important. Let me return and report to my master. Then I will reply to Palace Lord. Sui bowed. This was a matter of great importance. Although the resources offered by the Heavenly Palace were irresistible, he couldn't join the Heavenly Palace just like that. He was still the sect master of the Sky Goblin sect. Is that so? But Command Palace will always welcome little brother. Palace Master Guyu was a little surprised. This was an opportunity that all alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers yearned for. Yet, this young man rejected it without much hesitation. He couldn't help but be surprised. But Palace Lord Guyue didn't force him. He could see that this young man really did have some misgivings in his heart. Once this news reached the headquarters of Command Palace, it would most likely arouse their interest. At that time, people would naturally come again. Thank you, Palace Lord Guyue. Sui bowed and planned to leave. Merciless West and Green Emperor were still waiting for him outside. Little brother, you've already passed the test of Heavenly Palace. Although your badge is only a half-step heaven rank, your treatment won't change. In the future, you'll be able to go to any Heavenly Palace branch without any hindrance. You'll be able to access all the information of Heavenly Palace. If you need any help, Heavenly Palace would do its best to help. Palace Lord Guyue said to Sui. The treatment of a sky-rank soul controller was something that many people dreamed of. It was hard for ordinary people to imagine. Sui bowed and left. He felt that Command Palace's treatment should be pretty good. But at this moment, Sui still didn't know how great the treatment of a sky-rank soul controller would be. It was unimaginable. Watching Sui leave, Palace Lord Guyue's old face slightly narrowed. After a long time, a faint smile appeared on his face. He murmured softly, "Pretty good disguise technique. Does the Bawang sect really have such a sect?" After Sui bid farewell to Guyu, he walked out of the courtyard. A young disciple of the controller Heavenly Palace was already waiting for him outside. His expression was one of reverence as he silently assessed Sui. He found it hard to remain calm in his heart. He had been in the main hall since the beginning and had personally witnessed the terrifying scene of the test. It was like a miracle. The young disciple informed Sui that Merciless West and Green Emperor were already waiting outside. Under the guidance of the young disciple, Sui walked through several corridors. After a short while, he saw Merciless West and Green Emperor waiting in a side hall. "It's late, let's go out and talk." Seeing Sui, Merciless West stood up. "Sirs, Vice Palace Lord Guanlon has ordered you to go through the side door." The scene just now was too shocking. Many people are surrounding Command Palace right now. Many experts have come to ask for information. Vice Palace Lord Guanlon is greeting them right now. The young disciple said. Right now, the outside of Command Palace was packed. Many experts from Zhongzhou City had come to ask about the commotion just now. "Then let's go through the side door." Merciless West nodded. She glanced at Sui with shock in her eyes. Who would have thought that this brat could cause such a huge commotion just by inspecting the soul? A true worldly vision was simply too shocking. Under the guidance of the young disciple, Sui, Merciless West, and Green Emperor quietly left through the side door. Outside Juqian Palace, Sui looked up. It was almost dusk. The sunset glow covered half of the sky. The discussions in the city were getting more and more lively. "How is it?" After the young disciple left, Merciless West asked Sui. Her eyes were filled with curiosity. She wanted to know who Sui had just met. Sui didn't hide anything and told Merciless West the general situation. "It's actually Elder Guyue." Merciless West's eyes were filled with shock and surprise. "Brother knows Palace Lord Guyue?" Chapter 711. I don't know him, but I've seen him before. He's not simple, he's quite famous. I didn't expect him to be the Palace Lord of the Command Heavenly Palace. But that's not strange. Command Heavenly Palace is the largest city in Central Continent, and it's also in Sacred Mountains territory. Merciless West looked at Sui and said, "With Elder Guyue's position in the Command Heavenly Palace, it must be the palace's idea for you to join. With the quality of your soul, you should be able to obtain the greatest resources of the Command Heavenly Palace." Command Heavenly Palace isn't a place that just anyone can rope in. Then, Su-Yi learned from Merciless West that the core resources of the Command Heavenly Palace included pill recipes for alchemists, tool refinement methods for blacksmiths, lost secret arts for soul controllers, and soul cultivation methods. The Command Heavenly Palace was enormous, gathering almost all the alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers in the world. It had been passed down for countless years and accumulated a deep foundation. What kind of resources was this? It was hard to imagine. Su-Yi carefully pondered. The more he thought, the more moved he was. The resources of the Command Heavenly Palace were definitely beyond his imagination. Let's talk about this later. After a while, Su-Yi smiled. Although the resources of the Command Heavenly Palace were tempting, what they wanted was his talent as a soul controller. If it wasn't for the mysterious elder at the bottom of the cliff, he wouldn't have been able to become a soul controller. So if he wanted to join the Command Heavenly Palace, he had to at least tell that mysterious expert. You're still not moved? Merciless West was a bit surprised. Not many alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers could resist the temptation of the Command Heavenly Palace's resources. It was just that the people chosen by the Command Heavenly Palace were not ordinary. Brother, why don't you join the Command Heavenly Palace for real? Su-Yi smiled faintly. Merciless West was a wandering cultivator. With her fame, it shouldn't be hard for her to join the Command Heavenly Palace for real. I'm used to being free. Merciless West rolled her eyes at Su-Yi. Su-Yi chuckled and took out the Command Heavenly Palace's badge. He wanted to know what this badge represented. It seemed that everyone's badges were different. Looking at the badge in Su-Yi's hand, it was golden with a triangular shape with the seventh lightning. Merciless West's eyes flickered. Merciless West knew that this was not Su-Yi's badge. Command Heavenly Palace's branch of the Command Heavenly Palace's branch Command Est. Even the people of the Command Heavenly Palace wouldn't have thought that they would be able to detect a true heaven-rank soul in the Command Heavenly Palace. Even the soul-testing stone couldn't withstand such a soul. The badge of an apothecary is silver white, the badge of a blacksmith is bronze, and the badge of a soul controller is golden. The triangular shape represents the three ranks, and the intensity of the light is divided into primary, intermediate, and advanced. This rank represents one's strength. The ranks of alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers were different from those of martial artists. The ranks of soul controllers, alchemists, and blacksmiths range from the 1st grade to the 7th grade. The 7th grade alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers were legendary existences that were difficult to reach. The number of lightning arcs represents the quality of the soul. It's the same as a martial artist's talent. It's divided into common, good, general, commander, king, royal, and heaven rank. 1 lightning bolt represents a common, while 7 lightning bolts represent a heaven-rank soul. Merciless West explained the difference between the badges to Su-Yi. So if it's like this, Su-Yi was suddenly enlightened. So that's why, looking at the badge on Shi Wuqing, he was secretly puzzled. That's a rank of the 4th tier, brother. But why is the badge of the brilliant gold and silver white? Could it be that you're both a soul controller and an alchemist? And what kind of soul is that? Could it be a quasi-heaven rank soul? Su-Yi was very curious about Merciless West's badge. The 4 corners meant that it was of the 4th rank. The golden and silver colors meant that he was both an alchemist and a soul controller. The 7th lightning bolt was faintly discernible. It was exactly the same as the lightning bolt in Lu Xiaohu's badge. C++, new fastest 4V unspecified currency. Looking at Su-Yi, Merciless West nodded and took off his badge. He replied to Su-Yi, "That's right. This represents both an alchemist and a soul controller. His soul is also of the quasi-heaven rank. It has been verified for some time. A quasi-heaven rank soul controller and an alchemist. A quasi-heaven rank soul, an alchemist, and a soul controller." Su-Yi clicked his tongue. He hadn't expected that to be the case. No wonder Deputy Palace Master Wanlan, Deputy Palace Master Yen Lu, and the others treated Merciless West so courteously. In terms of Merciless West's strength, a quasi-heaven-rank soul controller, had been verified for some time. Perhaps Merciless West's current level had improved. However, Su-Yi estimated that a soul controller, an alchemist, and a blacksmith were comparable to a martial artist. A quasi-heaven-rank soul controller was equivalent to an origin emperor, while a quasi-heaven-rank soul controller was equivalent to an origin ancestor. Quasi-heaven-rank soul controllers, alchemists, and blacksmiths should be extremely rare. Quasi-heaven-rank soul controllers only existed in legends. Shouldn't I register for the Sacred Martial Assembly now? The streets were bustling with activity. Su-Yi looked up at the sky and saw that the sun had already set. There were only 3 days left until the Sacred Martial Assembly. At that time, the registration would be closed early. Since he had already been tested by the Imperial Palace, he could be considered to have a protective talisman from the Imperial Palace. Hopefully, he would be able to strike fear into the people of Central State City and successfully participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. There are places to register in the city. Once you take a look. Merciless West nodded. It was indeed necessary to register in advance. At dusk, the entire Zhongzhou city became more and more lively. It was noisy and crowded everywhere. The streets and alleys were filled with a sea of people. With his sharp soul strength, Su-Yi could easily tell that the experts in the city were as numerous as clouds. There were young geniuses everywhere. They were probably here for the Sacred Martial Assembly. After asking around, Su-Yi found out that there were places to register for the Sacred Martial Assembly in Zhongzhou City. Moreover, there were more than one. The number of people participating in the Sacred Martial Assembly was in the millions. This was a huge number. The various checks and registration tasks were incomparably heavy. Therefore, there was more than one place to register. Otherwise, who knew how long they would have to queue for? Following the address, Su-Yi, Merciless West, and Green Emperor arrived at their destination. Dozens of people were standing in a small square. There were armored Zhongzhou city guards on standby. They were emitting a sharp aura. Their cultivation was quite high. Su-Yi looked for a while, and he also found some clues. This examination would register the sect, age, name, and other information, and then there would be an item that looked like an examination stone. It seemed to be able to detect the age of cultivation. It was very mysterious. After passing the examination, one would receive an item that looked like a jade plate. It seemed that with this jade plate, one could participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly in 3 days. That examination stone detects the age of the Yuan Qi, and from there, it can determine the age. The Sacred Martial Assembly is a competition and verification for the younger generation to prevent people from fishing in troubled waters. Just as Su-Yi was curiously looking at the examination stone, Merciless West's voice transmission reached Su-Yi's ears. So that's how it is, Su-Yi secretly said in his heart. This examination seemed very mysterious, but in fact, it wasn't too special. As the young people were examined one by one, Su-Yi secretly remembered them in his heart. There were actually a few people from Clear Sky Sect, 3 Yuan School, and Clear Void Sect. Clear Sky Sect, 3 Yuan School, and Clear Void Sect were all part of the 5 sects and 3 factions, and they were the organizers of this Sacred Martial Assembly. There were also some young people who seemed to have some status, and they were disciples of forces that were second only to the 5 sects and 3 factions. This examination was very fast, and in less than half an hour, it was Su-Yi's turn. Among the middle-aged men and women in charge of the registration and examination, one of them had a square face, short black hair, and eyes like torches. He raised his head and glanced at Su-Yi. With a jade plate in his hand, he asked Su, "Name, age, which sect are you from?" Su-Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, and he said, "Isu, 16, from Bawang's sect." Swish, swish. Before Su-Yi could finish speaking, gazes from all over the square immediately landed on Su-Yi, as if they had been electrocuted. The middle-aged men and women in charge of the examination were all stunned, and then a rather extraordinary aura locked onto Su-Yi's body. Isu, Bawang's sect. You've really been searching high and low, only to find it without any effort. You've delivered yourself to my doorstep." The middle-aged man who had just questioned Su, he had a faint sneer in his eyes and looked at Su with excitement in his heart. However, his expression immediately returned to normal, and he pretended that nothing had happened. The person who was wanted by the entire city had unexpectedly delivered himself to his doorstep. This person was personally wanted by the city lord, and it could be considered a great achievement for him to have landed in front of him. However, the middle-aged man's gaze also fell on Merciless West and Green Emperor, who were not far away. According to the news from above, this young man had a primitive emperor and a demon emperor expert by his side. It must be those two people. The middle-aged man secretly gave a meaningful glance, and suddenly a middle-aged woman beside him hurriedly left. With the primitive emperor and demon emperor experts present, they couldn't deal with them. There were many armored guards of Zhongzhou City around, and their invisible aura locked on his Su, Merciless West, and Green Emperor. Their gazes were inexplicably sharp, and the atmosphere was secretly tense. How could the gazes of the crowd escape from Su, Merciless West, and Green Emperor's eyes? Su narrowed his eyes as he stared at the middle-aged man. From the looks of it, there were indeed people waiting for him everywhere. Only the city lord of the Central Continent City had the ability to deal with him in such a manner. Go for the examination. Inject your yuan qi into it, and there will be a display. If the examination stone doesn't emit a red light, it proves that you've passed the examination and can participate in the sacred martial assembly. The middle-aged man's expression returned to normal, and he immediately paid special attention to Su. All right, Su pretended that he didn't know. Anyway, he had also come to register, and he had already seen the examination procedure clearly. He arrived in front of the examination stone and injected his yuan qi into it. Suddenly, the stone was filled with dazzling light, but there was no red light. Chapter 7:13. Of course, you have passed the test. The middle-aged man in charge of the test nodded. Then give me the jade token. I still have something to do. Su asked the middle-aged man. He was no longer courteous. These people were obviously abnormal, so there was no need to be courteous. I'm afraid not. The middle-aged man's eyes flickered involuntarily. He shook his head slightly. He did not know why, but he felt that the young man's gaze made him afraid to look at him directly. Why not? I have already passed the test and registered. Are you deliberately making things difficult for me? Hearing this, Su Yi's expression sank. Su, you should know what you have done. You have indeed passed the test, but unfortunately, you have been disqualified from the sacred martial assembly. The middle-aged man clenched his teeth and mustered his courage to speak. This was just a young man, but he did not know why, but his heart trembled. The more he faced him, the more he felt suppressed, as if he was facing a superior. This sudden turn of events caused some of the disciples of the major forces who had completed their registration to abruptly stop in their tracks. They looked curiously at Su Shi Wuqing and the Green Emperor as they left. Isu belongs sect. Aren't they wanted in Zhongzhou City? Someone whispered. The news of the three of them being wanted in Zhongzhou City was huge. Even Origin Emperor realm experts had appeared. It could be said that the whole city was in an uproar. Many people had heard that there would be a great reward for providing clues about the three of them. Merciless West and Green Emperor's gazes were secretly moved at this moment. Why did you disqualify me? I really don't know what I've done to make the sacred martial assembly disqualify me. Su looked at the middle-aged man with narrowed eyes. A faint coldness gushed out from his eyes. The middle-aged man stared at Su. The young man in front of him probably didn't know what he had done. His expression darkened as he said, "Come with us, and you'll know. Someone will naturally tell you then. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Swish, swish. As soon as the middle-aged man finished speaking, many armored guards moved in unison, their swords drawn and bows bent, surrounding Su in the middle, and waves of fierce auras fluctuated. Merciless West and Green Emperor's eyes were cold, but they didn't make a move immediately. Instead, their eyes fell on Su. disqualifying me from the sacred martial assembly for no reason. I'm afraid it's a little unreasonable, right? Looking straight at the middle-aged man, Su Yi could tell from his aura that he was at Yuan Zhen's stage. Su Yi was not afraid of him at all. This, being stared at by Su Yi, that invisible aura caused the middle-aged man's heart to tremble, and he was unable to refute. He didn't know why the higher-ups wanted this brat, but he heard that this brat in front of him had severely injured the second young master, causing the city lord to be enraged and issue an arrest warrant. I said, "Come with me, and someone will tell you when the time comes." The middle-aged man gritted his teeth. Although he knew that it was most likely the Demon Emperor and Yuan Emperor experts, there was no need to be afraid of these three people in Zhongzhou City. "What if I don't go with you?" Su Yi said in a deep voice, his eyes cold. The people of Zhongzhou City, which was the people of Sacred Mountain, didn't have a good impression of him. Looking at Su Yi's cold eyes, the middle-aged man couldn't help but shudder, not daring to look straight at him. "If you don't go, then I can only take you away." A thunderous voice came from the void, and a vast aura descended from the depths of the void. At the same time, several streamers swept across the void like lightning, and a vast aura immediately shrouded the surrounding void. Merciless West and Green Emperor's eyes suddenly looked up at the void, and their faces sank. "There's an expert." Under such a shocking aura, the young disciples who stayed behind changed their expressions. Outside the square, many people also looked up at the sky. Wave after wave of vast auras descended, causing the world to tremble slightly. Even the air seemed to have solidified. Under such a shocking aura, the people present couldn't help but feel afraid, and the yuan qi in their bodies was affected. Swoosh, swoosh. Soon, the streamers appeared and descended on the square. There were a total of 3 figures, and the one in front was an old man in his 50s. His eyes were like torches, and he immediately looked at Su Yi, Merciless West, and Green Emperor. His eyes were as sharp as swords, but when his gaze fell on Merciless West and Green Emperor, his expression changed slightly. Beside the old man, there were 2 other old men, and the aura around them froze the void around the square. Greetings to the 3 lords. Seeing the arrival of the 3 old men, all the guards and middle-aged men and women who were in charge of the registration immediately cupped their fists and bowed respectfully. "It's them." Looking at the 3 old men in front of him, Su Yi's eyes flickered. Su Yi had seen 2 of the 3 old men before. The first old man in his 50s was the old man he had met when he entered Zhongzhou City. The old man on the left was the first-level Origin Emperor expert who had followed Ouyang Mingjie on the way here. As for the yellow-clothed elder on the right, Su Yi had never seen him before. However, judging from his aura, he was definitely an expert of the Origin Emperor realm. He seemed to be much stronger than the first-level Origin Emperor realm expert. "It's them." The first-level Origin Emperor old man said to the old man in his 50s as he landed, looking at Su Yi, Merciless West, and the Green Emperor. His eyes still had some lingering fear. Back then, he had fought with the Green Emperor, who was a powerful Demon Emperor expert. Shi Wuqing and the Green Emperor stepped out and slowly walked to Su Yi's side. Around them, there were many armored soldiers. "I don't care who you are, follow us." The old man in his 50s looked at Su Yi, Merciless West, and the Green Emperor as he spoke. An extraordinary Demon Emperor and Origin Emperor expert accompanied this young man. The fact that this young man was able to injure Ouyang Mingjie was enough to prove that the 3 of them were not simple. "What if we don't agree?" Merciless West asked as she looked at the old man in his 50s. "Then don't blame me for being impolite. This is Zhongzhou City." The old man in his 50s looked at Merciless West, and his eyes flickered. He had a feeling that this old man was the most difficult person to deal with. Is that so? Is Zhongzhou City using the sacred mountain to bully others? The Sacred Martial Assembly is open to all the young people in Zhongzhou City. We are here to register for the Sacred Martial Assembly, but we are disqualified for no reason and are wanted by Zhongzhou City. I wonder who gave you this right? Chapter 714. He, The Sacred Martial Assembly is indeed a place where the younger generation of Zhongzhou can participate. However, you have seriously injured the second young master who was out on official business and obstructed the guards of Zhongzhou City. As for the punishment, the city lord will decide it. The old man in his 50s sneered. These two might have some background, but they didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. This was the central continent city. Who would dare to be so arrogant? In other words, even the Heavenly Dragon Sect, Immortal Sword Sect, Immeasurable Sect, Gemini Sect, and other forces would not dare to go too far in the central continent city. Zhongzhou City was the territory of the Sacred Mountain, not to mention the Sacred Martial Assembly. Bullsh asterisk T. Many people can testify that Ouyang Mingjie was arrogant and attacked me first. I didn't expect to suffer a loss and let the city lord of Zhongzhou City stand up for me. Indeed, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Zhongzhou City is really impressive. Su Yi's eyes darkened. If he hadn't promised the merciless West, he wouldn't have participated in the Sacred Martial Assembly. Kid, don't be presumptuous. Come with me, or let me do it. The old man's eyes twitched. This kid is actually so arrogant. As soon as he finished speaking, an invisible aura suddenly shrouded and suppressed Su Yi. The aura was overwhelming. This was the aura of an Origin Emperor expert. Those who weren't strong enough would be forced to kneel. Su Yi was also affected. The Origin Qi in his body suddenly stagnated, and his legs almost went soft. Boom! However, at this moment, Su Yi directly circulated the Origin Supreme technique in his body. A majestic and domineering aura circulated and resisted the mighty aura. Who do you think you are? Almost at the same time, the Green Emperor walked out. His voice was like a chime, shaking the void. His eyes shone with a terrifying green light. A third-level demon emperor aura spread out and directly hit the old man in his 50s. The mighty demon Qi swept across the square and rushed to the sky. The armored guards around the square were shocked and couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. This kind of aura was not something they could resist. LV3 Demon Emperor Realm. The old man in his 50s and the Origin Emperor Realm expert in yellow beside him were shocked as they stared at the Green Emperor. The aura of a level 3 Demon Emperor Realm expert was extraordinary. He was definitely not an ordinary Demon Emperor Realm expert of the Demon Clan. What's going on? Under this kind of aura, more and more people were alarmed. Central Continent City was already packed with people to begin with. Very quickly, this small plaza was surrounded by a dense crowd. Countless gazes were cast over. Whoosh! Golden spears sounded, auras fluctuating. Quite a few Central Continent City guards rushed over, their auras fierce. They appeared outside the plaza, but when they saw the lineup in the plaza, they could only silently surround the outside. What happened? The three people wanted by the Central Continent City have appeared. Isu of the Bawang sect, an Origin Emperor Realm expert, and a Demon Emperor Realm expert. Will there be a great battle? The onlookers were discussing animatedly. Their eyes were filled with shock and anticipation. They didn't know whether they would witness a great battle between two Emperor-level powerhouses. Are you challenging the Central Continent City? Challenging the Sacred Mountain? In the plaza, the old man in his 50s felt the aura of the Green Emperor. His gaze became sharper and sharper. How could such a young man, who had such an extraordinary Demon Emperor Realm expert by his side, be a simple person? This made him somewhat uncertain. However, Zhongzhou City was the territory of the Sacred Mountain. Who in the world would dare to provoke the Sacred Mountain? Merciless West looked at the old man in his 50s and the other two. Then he glanced at Su Yi and said, "Since the Central Continent City is so arrogant, let's see if they dare to take you away. Now that you have passed the test of the Yuqian Palace, you are still a disciple of the Yuqian Palace. With the Yuqian Palace's attitude towards you, if the Central Continent City really wants to take you away, Elder Gua won't just stand by and watch. However, it depends on whether you dare to gamble or not. If you don't dare to gamble, as long as we are in the Yuqian Palace, we will be able to sit back and relax. At worst, we won't participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. Merciless West's voice also reached Su Yi's ears. 3 Origin Emperor Realm experts had shown up. It was enough to prove that the Central Continent City had taken the initiative. He didn't know what the Yuqian Palace's attitude would be. However, if they were in the Yuqian Palace, for the sake of the Yuqian Palace's reputation, the Yuqian Palace would definitely not hand them over. The Sacred Mountain also wouldn't dare to casually go to the Yuqian Palace and ask for them. Su Yi nodded in understanding. Now, it was time to gamble on the Yuqian Palace's attitude. Hearing Merciless West and Su Yi's words, the old man in his 50s, the yellow-clothed old man, and the first-level martial Emperor Realm expert's eyes flickered. It seemed that the 3 of them didn't dare to provoke the Sacred Mountain after all. Why look at Section X of Chapter 10 of the current /0 version? However, under the astonished gazes of the 3, they saw Su Yi take out a badge from his bosom and hang it on his shoulder. The badge was golden and had a triangular shape. The 6 lightning bolts were resplendent, and the 7th lightning bolt was also emitting light, but it was comparatively dimmer. When they saw the badge, the old man in his 50s, the yellow-clothed old man, and the first-level Origin Emperor Realm expert were stunned. 3rd level early stage soul manipulation master, a half-step heaven rank soul. The old man in his 50s couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. How could he not recognize the badge of the Yuqian Palace? It was the badge of a 3rd level soul manipulation master certified by the Yuqian Palace. However, the most important thing was the half-step heaven rank soul. A half-step heaven rank soul. What kind of level was that? As an Origin Emperor Realm expert, the old man in his 50s held an important position in the Central Continent City. How could he not know that? A soul manipulation master with such talent only existed in legends. A half-step heaven rank soul was the dream of many soul manipulation masters. If he was in the Sacred Mountain, he would definitely be the most important disciple. Looking at the badge, the old man in his 50s face twitched. No wonder this young man was so arrogant. The Central Continent City didn't care about a 3rd level soul manipulation master. A 3rd level soul manipulation master with a half-step heaven rank soul was something the Central Continent City could deal with. However, he was a soul manipulation master certified by the Yuqian Palace. He had the badge of the Yuqian Palace. To a certain extent, he was also a member of the Yuqian Palace. He had heard of the terrible temper of the Yuqian Palace. Go to the Yuqian Palace and inform them that the Central Continent City disqualified Yi Su from the Sacred Martial Assembly for no reason and captured Su Yi. Merciless West said to the Green Emperor. The Green Emperor turned his head and retracted his gaze from the old man in his 50s. He looked back at Su Yi and nodded secretly. He glared at the old man in his 50s and the others. Suddenly, a green light flashed under his feet and his figure soared into the sky. The old man in his 50s, the yellow-clothed old man, the 3 Origin Emperors, and the middle-aged man and woman were dumbfounded. If the Yuqian Palace was involved in this matter, it wouldn't be an ordinary matter. A soul manipulation master with a half-step heaven rank soul was no ordinary soul manipulation master. Chapter 7:15. Fine, since they want to take you away, I'll go with you. I want to see how great Central City is. Merciless West said to Su Yi. If he let Su Yi go with these people alone, he wouldn't be at ease. After all, Su Yi was only at the Origin Profound Realm. Su Yi nodded, knowing that Merciless West didn't feel at ease with him. Seeing the expressions of the 50-year-old man and the others, Su Yi understood in his heart that the people of Central Continent City were indeed a little afraid of the Imperial Heavenly Palace. Looking at the 50-year-old man, he said, If you want me to make a trip, then I'll accompany you. At this moment, the 50-year-old man and the others looked at each other in dismay. A soul controller recognized by the Imperial Palace, and such a talented one at that, would definitely be valued by the Imperial Palace. Everyone knew that although the people of the Imperial Palace didn't care about worldly affairs and only focused on refining pills, they were extremely united. Then come with us. The city lord will make a decision when the time comes. Gritting his teeth, the 50-year-old man made his decision. It was already too late to back down. Moreover, This was someone wanted by the city lord. If they didn't bring him back, Central City would lose all face. After bringing him back, the city lord would make a decision and they wouldn't be able to deal with this matter. Lead the way. Merciless West nodded. The 50-year-old man and the others' faces twitched inwardly, but they were much more polite. How? Outside the plaza, a pair of wings on its back emitted an icy blood aura. It had a ferocious appearance and a robust body, and it soared into the sky. The fierce wind blood wolf was Central City's mount. It brought Merciless West and Sue E away. I'm afraid these two will be miserable. It said that the young man seriously injured the second son of the city lord, Ouyang Mingjia. Not necessarily. That young man has Origin Emperor and Demonic Emperor experts following him. He's also a soul controller with half a step into heaven-rank soul quality. His background is definitely not simple. Central State City's city lord, that is a popular figure of Sacred Mountain. Even if that youth has some background, could it be greater than Sacred Mountain? Stop talking so as to avoid attracting trouble. Let's prepare to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. Seeing Sue E and the others being taken away, the crowd of onlookers started to discuss. However, this was only a small interlude. Everyone had come for the Sacred Martial Assembly, and most of their attention was on the Sacred Martial Assembly. It said that the representative sent by the Sacred Mountain this time is Naren Ruyu. Her cultivation is unfathomable. I also heard that this Naren Ruyu is not simple. He is the holy son of the Holy Mountain. In every Sacred Martial Assembly, the champion is almost always a disciple of the Holy Mountain. This Naren Ruyu is a holy son of the Holy Mountain. Naturally, he has the strength. Don't underestimate the disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions this time. It is said that there are many extremely talented people emerging from the 5 sects and 3 factions. It is said that the extremely talented people of the 5 sects and 3 factions have already arrived in the Central State City. If you want to see who is most likely to enter the top 10, it is said that you can go to the betting points to have a look. They are well informed and have the information of the disciples of the major forces. Is that so? Then let's go and have a look. The Sacred Martial Assembly was held once every 30 years, and all the young people in the Central State City could participate. What a grand event it was. In the Sacred Martial Assembly, one could become famous in the world with a single battle. It was a dazzling moment that many young people dreamed of. But to be able to do that, they were all peerless geniuses and peerless geniuses. In the Central State City, in every Sacred Martial Assembly, there would be many big and small betting points. The hotspots of betting were also the popular disciples of the major forces and dark horses who had the highest chance of entering the top 10. It was said that these betting points were backed by many big trading companies and even the major forces in the Central State City. They had the most detailed information. There were some busybodies who could see the clues of the top 10 disciples of the Sacred Martial Assembly from the odds of these betting points. Those who were able to make it onto the betting list naturally had absolute strength. Dusk. The sun was setting in the west, but the Central State City was still filled with a sea of people. The lights were brightly lit, and the place was bustling with noise. Outside the betting points, there was an impenetrable crowd. Many people were unable to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly and were only onlookers. However, those who had the highest chance of entering the top 10 could be considered to have participated in the Sacred Martial Assembly. It would be even better if their bets were accurate. The betting points were filled with the information of the disciples of the major forces who had the highest chance of entering the top 10. The onlookers could also see many clues from these rankings. Sacred Mountain, Naren Ruyu. Sacred Mountain, Chu Zhanghuan. Skyblaze Sect, Qi Tianxian. Heavenly Profound Sect, Gong Qinqing. Blue Cloud Sect, Li Qingwei. 3 Origin Sect, Feng Qingno. Distinct Void Sect, Lin Fan. Clear Sky Sect, Chen Yanhuan. Beast Emperor Sect, Shaoxi. Xinjiang Gate, Mu Yao. Heavenly Profound Sect, Lu Xiaohu. Xinjiang Gate, Jianwuk. Wasn't heavenly profound sex Gong Qianxing's odds of entering the top 10 1 to 5? Why is it 1 to 3 now? Blue Cloud sex Li Qingwei's odds were 1 to 6, but now it's 1 to 2. Why did it suddenly change? In heavenly profound sex, Lu Xiaohu's odds of entering the top 10. It was 1 to 10 this morning, but now it's 1 to 5. At Bawang Sex Su, who is that? Why haven't I heard of him? His odds are 1 to 2 too. The rankings and odds and the betting points were constantly changing, causing the onlookers to discuss animatedly. Heavenly profound sex Gong Qianxing has passed the Imperial Palace's test. Quasi-heaven rank soul, early stage, third stage soul controller. Blue Cloud sex Li Qingwei has also passed the Imperial Palace's test. Quasi-heaven rank soul, early stage, third stage soul controller. Heavenly profound sex Lu Xiaohu has passed the Imperial Palace's test. Quasi-heaven rank soul controller. Someone from the betting points walked out and told everyone the reason. Oh my God, no one of the odds changed. Quasi-heaven rank soul, quasi-heaven rank soul. All of them are soul controllers. When such news spread, the onlookers couldn't help but exclaim, Bawang Sex Su, what's his background? Someone asked curiously. Li Qingwei, Gong Qianxing, and Lu Xiaohu were all disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions, but no one had ever heard of this Bawang Sex Su. The strange phenomenon not long ago was caused by this person in the Imperial Palace's soul controller test. This person's soul quality is unfathomable. The Imperial Palace's soul testing stone can't bear it. His soul quality should be above Li Qingwei's. The person at the betting points was also shocked. When he received the news, he was also moved. First stage F. If even the Imperial Palace's soul testing stone couldn't bear that kind of soul, how strong was it? Chapter 716. The Bawang Sex Su. So it was him who caused the heaven and earth anomaly. Once the news was out, it immediately spread like a storm. The heaven and earth anomaly in the afternoon, which shook the entire continent's center city, was caused by the Bawang Sex Su. It seems like a dark horse has appeared in this year's Sacred Martial Assembly. Someone exclaimed. Although the outstanding disciples of the Sacred Mountain and the 5 sects and 3 factions were the most eye-catching in every Sacred Martial Assembly, there would always be an extraordinary dark horse that could shake the world. The older people knew that a dark horse had appeared in the Sacred Martial Assembly 30 years ago. He had almost entered the top 10 of the Sacred Martial Assembly. How powerful was he? The Bawang Sex Su. What a familiar name. Someone murmured. This name seemed somewhat familiar. I remember now. Isn't the Bawang Sex Su one of the 3 wanted people in the city? That's right. Not long ago, the Bawang Sex Su seemed to have been taken away by the city lord's mansion. Night fell in the continent's center city. In a secluded courtyard, a young man stood. He was about 18 or 19 years old. The moonlight shone on his perfect face, making it even more angular. Under his long and thick eyelashes, his eyes were like stars. He whispered, half-step heaven-rank soul, quasi-heaven-rank soul, and that Bawang Sex Su. This time, geniuses have appeared in large numbers. Their strength cannot be underestimated. Behind the young man, an old man in his 60s said, Do you want to go to the Imperial Palace to be tested tomorrow? No need, Martial Uncle. I'll go after the Sacred Martial Assembly. If it's not a half-step heaven-rank soul, the test is meaningless. The young man whispered. Under his long and thick eyelashes, his eyes flickered. He smiled and said, The Bawang sect, is there such a sect? How big is the central state? There are as many small sects as there are stars in the sky. Perhaps they exist. The old man said, Gong Qianxing, Li Qingwei, Isu, and Naren Ryu, the young man whispered. His eyes flickered, and there was an undetectable fighting spirit in his eyes. Central Continent City, in a secluded area, the noise in the distance soared into the heavens. The lights were brightly lit, and it was bustling with noise and excitement. In the corner of the courtyard, the white-clothed youth looked at the bright moon and murmured, Bawang Sex Su, Blue Cloud Sex Li Qingwei, Tianqian Sex Gong Qinxing. Senior Brother Feng, we've just received news that Isu from the Bawang sect has been arrested by the mayor's mansion. I heard that he severely injured Ouyang Mingjie. A slightly younger youth said. He looked at the white-clothed youth in front of him, and his eyes were filled with respect and worship. That Ouyang Mingjie used the name of the Saint Mountain to provoke people he shouldn't have. However, the mayor's mansion actually dared to take away Isu. I'm afraid there will be a good show to watch. The white-clothed youth raised his head. His long eyelashes flickered, and a faint smile appeared on his face. The mayor of Central Continent City is someone from the Saint Mountain. That Bawang sect doesn't have any background. Provoking the Saint Mountain, I'm afraid he'll be in trouble. The youth's eyes moved. This was Central Continent City, and the mayor was someone from the Saint Mountain. That Isu would be in trouble. There are some things you don't understand. That Isu passed the test of the Imperial Palace. That's different. Those people from the Imperial Palace wouldn't ignore such a talented soul controller. The white-clothed youth raised his eyes. His expression was bright as he smiled. Night fell. Somewhere in Central Continent City. Coo! A spirit bird screeched, its voice clear. A green spirit bird was perched on the eaves of a house. Its entire body was filled with green light, and its eyes were like colored glass in the night. A green-robed youth's eyes were like torches. His green robes were embroidered with decorative patterns on the collar and cuffs. His jet-black hair was tied up, and his slender body was straight. Under the cover of the moonlight, his entire body was handsome, and he exuded an innate noble temperament. Li Qingwei, Gong Qinxing, Isu, the youth softly said. His voice also carried a kind of elegant and charming magnetism. The corners of his mouth were moderately thick, and it seemed like a dazzling smile would appear at any time. Looking from afar, he gave off a feeling that he was too high to reach, that he was as low as a speck of dust. Night moonlight. Somewhere in Central Continent City, on the eaves of a palace courtyard, a graceful figure stood. She looked at the noisy and brightly lit place in the distance, and her eyes flickered. This was a young woman. She had a charming face, and her eyes were big and bright. Her strange pupils carried a faint golden color, and under the moonlight, it added a bit of charm. Li Qingwei actually has a half-step heaven-rank soul. I wonder how much she has improved after all these years. The woman muttered to herself. Under the tight clothes, her slender and straight legs were outlined. The curve of her body was incomparably moving, and it emitted a bright and moving youthful aura. Then, she slowly fell and disappeared. Night, Central Continent City, Palace of Drive Heavens. Oh, whoa! Suddenly, the beast roars were like thunder. Huge, savage beasts flew out from the Palace of Drive Heavens. They were dazzling, and their auras were fierce, roaring in the night sky. On top of the savage beasts, there were figures standing, and their auras fluctuated. In an instant, a majestic aura rushed to the sky and headed towards the City Lord Mansion. What's going on? Why is there such a big commotion? Did something happen? They seem to be people from Drive Heaven's Palace. Where are they going? Such a commotion startled many people. They raised their eyes and exclaimed. This kind of aura was not ordinary. It was so aggressive, as if something big had happened. The City Lord Mansion was huge, and it stood majestically in Central Continent City. Su and Merciless West were brought into the huge City Lord Mansion. Under the arrangement of the Origin Emperor Realm expert, they were finally settled in a side hall. They were not troubled along the way. In the side hall, there were only Su, and Merciless West, but there were many Central Continent City guards waiting outside. The old man had already left. This City Lord Mansion is really big. In the side hall, Su said. Along the way, the City Lord Mansion was really luxurious and grand. It was worthy of being the City Lord Mansion of the #1 city in Central Continent. You aren't anxious at all. Merciless West smiled and said to Su, What's there to be anxious about? We'll deal with whatever comes our way. It will depend on how much face Drive Heaven's Palace has. Su smiled. In Central Continent City, Even if Merciless West and the Green Emperor were by his side, they would not be able to contend against Central Continent City. Chapter 717. Central Continent City. In the Grand City Lord's mansion, the main hall was bustling with noise and excitement. Spirit fruits and exotic flowers were everywhere. Inside the main hall, many people were sitting upright. On the left side of the seat of honor was an old man in a long robe, his eyes flashing with brilliance. On the right side of the seat of honor was a middle-aged man in his 40s. His face was dignified, and he was dressed in a tight robe that outlined his muscular figure. He had the dignity of a superior. Below the old man was a young man in his early 20s. He had a strange light blue long hair that was untied and draped over his back. He had a high nose, thin lips, and sword-like eyebrows. The outline of his handsome face was perfect and impeccable, especially the pair of deep blue eyes under his sword-like eyebrows. They were like emeralds, carrying a kind of womanly charm that made one's heart tremble. The young man sat quietly, his thin lips slightly pursed, as if he was smiling yet not. His skin was as white as snow, as if it was emitting a faint silvery white luster. He had an aura that made one's heart tremble. Beside this young man, there was another young man of about the same age. He also had an extraordinary temperament. His eyes were clear and bottomless. His skin was sparkling like jade, and his long black hair was draped over his shoulders, emitting a faint light. This young man was dressed in a purple robe. Although he was sitting upright, one could see that his figure was tall and slender. Sitting there, he also had an indescribable elegance and dignified appearance. This time, my sacred mountain has nephew Nalen and nephew Chu participating in the sacred martial assembly. I'm afraid that the pressure on the 5 sects and 3 factions will increase even more. In the main hall, below the dignified middle-aged man, a middle-aged woman in her 40s was sizing up the 2 young men. In her long and narrow eyes, it seemed that the more she looked, the more she liked them. Her gaze fell on a young woman who was about the same age as the 2 young men beside her, as if she was hinting at something. The middle-aged woman's appearance was ordinary, but the invisible aura that emanated from her body was extraordinary. However, the young woman beside her was quite attractive. Her skin was as white as snow, and as she looked around, she had a cold temperament that made people feel attracted. Her faint cold arrogance was somewhat captivating. Hearing the middle-aged woman's words, the young woman's gaze also fell on the 2 young men. She said, "Mother, what are you saying?" With senior brother Nalen and senior brother Chu, the disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions can't compare to them. While speaking, the woman had a charming bearing. There was also a bit of arrogance in her eyes. Ouyang Jinwei. She was also somewhat confident in her own strength. Junior sister Jinwei is too kind. With junior sister Jinwei's strength, it's enough to make those people from the 5 sects and 3 factions suffer. The purple-robed youth with pitch-black hair spoke with a faint smile as he spoke to Ouyang Jinwei. He was Chu Zhonghuan. He was very clear that the Sacred Mountain sent him to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly this time just to join in the fun. He could also take the opportunity to see how strong the leaders of the 5 sects and 3 factions were. The green-haired young man didn't say anything. His eyes were calm, as if everything around him had nothing to do with him. However, I heard that there are many peerless talents in the 5 sects and 3 factions this time. The Xinjiang Gate has a girl called Mu Yao. She's very extraordinary. There's also the heavenly profound sects Gong, Qinxing, and the Beast Emperor sects Xiao Sijun. It's said that they are all monstrous talents. Below the main hall, an old man in his 50s spoke. He was dressed in a long robe with embroidered patterns that looked like badges on his shoulders. It seemed to represent some kind of identity or status. At this moment, if Su Yi was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that this person was none other than Wang Xuanda of the Sacred Mountain. This Mu Yao isn't simple. She has a half-monster body. The old man in the main hall spoke, his eyes flickering with light. In the main hall, there were still many guests accompanying them. When they heard that Mu Yao had a half-monster body, The expressions in their eyes changed. A half-monster body. This was an unspoken taboo among the major powers. During dusk, the heavenly phenomenon should have originated from a branch of the Imperial Heavenly Palace, right? Has City Lord Ouyang found out the reason? Suddenly, the green-haired young man lifted his head and asked the middle-aged man with a dignified expression. The middle-aged man was none other than Ouyang Yuanfeng. As the city lord of the Central Continent, he was also a direct disciple of the Sacred Mountain. When he was young, he was also an influential figure in the Sacred Mountain. However, at this moment, facing the green-haired young man, Ouyang Yuanfeng didn't dare to be arrogant. He knew the identity of a young man in front of him. He was very polite and said, "Nephew Nalan, please wait a moment. I've already sent people to inquire about the details. The detailed information will take a little longer." The heavenly phenomenon caused by the Imperial Heavenly Palace. Could it be that it was caused by someone? The old man in the main hall frowned inwardly. The heavenly phenomenon caused by the Imperial Heavenly Palace wasn't caused by a disciple of the Sacred Mountain. This made him somewhat worried. City Lord, City Lord. Suddenly, a voice was heard. A figure rushed into the main hall in a hurry. It was the old man in his 50s who led Su, E, and Merciless West to the City Lord mansion. Elder Qian, why are you so flustered? Vidalamosto New, Chapter D, Section Cool Craftsman. WebEx, Ouyang Yuanfeng's eyes moved. He was also very polite. The elder in front of him was much older than him. He was at the 5th level of the Origin Emperor realm and had always been his right-hand man. Greetings to Elder Bingxiao, Saint, Madam, and Mississippi. Elder Qian walked into the main hall. When he saw the old man in the main hall, the green-haired young man, the middle-aged woman, Ouyang Jinwei, and the others, he immediately restrained his anxious expression and bowed. In the face of Elder Qian, an expert at the 5th level of the Origin Emperor realm, Elder Bingxiao, and the green-haired young man who was addressed as Saint didn't act arrogantly. They also nodded in response. On the other hand, the middle-aged woman looked at Elder Qian. Suddenly, a cold light gushed out from her eyes as she asked, "How is it? Have you found the person?" Elder Qian's eyes twitched helplessly. He said to the middle-aged woman, "Madam and City Lord, the disciple of the Bawang sect who severely injured second young master has been brought back to the mansion." "Good. Take him to the mansion's dungeon first. I will deal with him personally later. Since he dared to injure my son, I will not let him go. That Bawang sect will also pay the price." Kwang Guilan's face was gloomy. Her heart was bleeding for the person who dared to injure her son to such an extent. No matter who it was, she wouldn't let him go. In the main hall, the people of the Sacred Mountain listened to Kwang Guilan's words, but didn't say anything. They had also heard that Ouyang Mingjie was severely injured by a young man of similar age when he was out on an errand. After all, Ouyang Mingjie was also a disciple of the Sacred Mountain. Naturally, they wouldn't let him go when he was severely injured. "Madam, I'm afraid this is a little..." Chapter 718. Elder Qian, what's wrong? That person is from the Bawang sect. Just do as the madam says. Don't affect Elder Bawang and Nephew Nalan's mood. Ouyang Yuanfeng looked at Elder Qian's expression and said softly. The people from Sacred Mountain this time were mainly Elder Bawang and the others. Nothing was more important than accompanying Elder Bawang. In the future, if he wanted to go further in Sacred Mountain, he would have to rely on the elders of Sacred Mountain to put in a good word for him. "City Lord, I'm afraid this matter is a little troublesome. The person has been brought back to the residence, but that brat's identity is a little special. He's a soul controller who passed the test of Yuqian Palace." Elder Qian was helpless. If it was just an ordinary identity, he would have been able to deal with it. There was no need for him to come and see the city lord in person. Soul controller. Hearing this, many people in the main hall were secretly moved. The identity of a soul controller was indeed a little special. It was too rare. No wonder Ouyang Mingjie was seriously injured. So what if he's a soul controller? He injured my son, so he must pay the price. Kwang Guilan said coldly. Her precious son was seriously injured. Even if he was a soul controller, she could not let him go. But she also knew what it meant to pass the test of Yuqin Palace. It would be a little troublesome. She immediately stood up and bowed to Elder Bawang, saying, I ask Elder Bawang to make a decision on this matter. Mingjie is also a disciple of Sacred Mountain. He was seriously injured by that Bawang sect brat and can't even participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. This is not putting Sacred Mountain in his eyes. I beg Elder Bawang to seek justice for my son. Virtuous niece, you don't have to be so courteous. Your grandfather and I are both elders of the Holy Mountain. Speaking of which, your grandfather is my martial uncle, while Ouyang Ming is a disciple of the Holy Mountain. It's indeed too much for him to be seriously injured this time, so I can't just sit by and watch. I can't sit back and do nothing. Elder Bawang's eyes moved slightly. After a pause, he said, that brat's identity as a soul controller tested by Yuqin Palace is a little troublesome, but it's not completely impossible. Sacred Mountain also has a soul controller tested by Yuqin Palace. When the time comes, Yuqin Palace can't find any reason to say anything. Many thanks, Elder Icepot. Kuang Guilan's face lit up. That brat merely had one of the identities that the Imperial Celestial Palace had checked. She originally didn't place him in her eyes, but in order to avoid trouble with Elder Icepot's method, it was absolutely foolproof. Ouyang Yuanfeng's eyes moved. He was extremely displeased in his heart when he saw that his son had been seriously injured. However, disqualifying the other party from the Sacred Martial Gathering and issuing a warrant for the arrest of that young man was a little excessive. It also made people feel that the City Lord Mansion was somewhat petty and bullying others. Ouyang Yuanfeng, as Ouyang Mingjie's father, was more or less aware of Ouyang Mingjie's usual behavior. Therefore, this matter was not his original intention, but his wife, Kuang Guilan's idea. In the Ouyang family, because of Kuang Guilan's maternal family's position in the Holy Mountain, Ouyang Yuanfeng also relied on his wife's maternal family to have everything he had today. In addition, he also loved his son dearly, so everything was tacitly agreed. At this moment, with Elder Icepot's words, although that brat was a soul controller tested by the Imperial Celestial Palace, it was absolutely foolproof. When the time comes, the Imperial Celestial Palace would find a soul controller to punish him. The Imperial Celestial Palace wouldn't be able to say anything. After all, it was a soul controller tested by the Imperial Celestial Palace. Zhongzhou City was also the Holy Mountain's territory. The Imperial Celestial Palace wouldn't dare to casually do anything to the Holy Mountain. Elder Qi, I'll have to trouble you to make the arrangements first. We'll talk about this later. Ouyang Yuanfeng nodded and waved his hand at Elder Qi. With Elder Icepot here, nothing would go wrong. Nothing would happen. Cool Craftsman Network's official version. Looking at Elder Icepot, Ouyang Yuanfeng, Kuang Guilan, and the others in the hall, Elder Qi looked up and didn't leave. He said, there's one more thing. I'm afraid the City Lord must know. Elder Qi, please speak. Ouyang Yuanfeng said. Elder Qi said that Isu is a third-rank soul controller tested by the Imperial Celestial Palace. So what if he's a third-rank soul controller? There are third-rank soul controllers everywhere. Ouyang Jinwei said with a frown. There was a faint arrogance in her eyes. She was also very unhappy that her brother was injured. Soul controllers were extremely rare and had a high status. But as a direct disciple of the Holy Mountain, she grew up in the Holy Mountain and had seen many third-rank soul controllers. Third rank, Elder Icepot, Wang Chuanda, and the other experts from the Holy Mountain were secretly moved. They all heard the news that the Bawang sect's Isu who injured Ouyang Mingjie was close in age to Ouyang Mingjie, was an early third-rank soul controller, and passed the Imperial Celestial Palace's test. It was enough to show that he wasn't ordinary. In the entire Holy Mountain, he was definitely not ordinary and could be ranked in the top ranks. Elder Qi looked at Ouyang Jinwei and continued. Young miss, that Isu is not only a third-rank soul controller tested by the Imperial Celestial Palace, he's also a half-step heaven-rank soul controller. I just received news that the strange phenomenon in Central State City was caused by this Isu's test in the Imperial Celestial Palace. It said that the Imperial Celestial Palace's soul testing stone couldn't withstand the soul quality and exploded, unable to determine the true soul quality. That's why that Isu only obtained a half-step heaven-rank soul emblem. What? When Elder Chi's voice fell, the entire hall was suddenly filled with exclamations. Within the great hall, everyone was dumbfounded. The light cyan-haired young man, Chu Zhonghuan, Wang Chuanda, Ouyang Feng, Elder Bing Chao, and the others all revealed looks of shock. They naturally knew what these words meant. The strange phenomenon was caused by him. The light cyan-haired youth raised his eyebrows. His expression that seemed to have nothing to do with him finally changed. Violent ripples appeared in his eyes as light flickered. Is this news confirmed? Elder Icepot stood up in shock. This was too shocking. During the test, it said that the Heavenly Profound Sect, Shenjin Gate, and Blue Cloud Sect all had experts present and witnessed it with their own eyes. Elder Chi said he had just returned to the City Lord's mansion and received the news. Boom! Suddenly, the entire hall trembled for no reason, causing the Yuan Qi in everyone's body to feel a blockage. Many experts have arrived. Elder Icepot suddenly stood up. His eyes were moved as he probed with his mind. If Isu loses even a single hair, I'll raise this place to the ground today. Almost at the same time, an aged voice resounded like a thunderclap, causing the entire hall to shake incessantly. The thunderous voice was like a storm, resounding throughout Central State City. Chapter 719. Could it be Yuqian Palace? Wang Chuanda asked, looking a little flustered. But for a kid, the people of Yuqian Palace wouldn't be so quick. Let's go and take a look. Elder Binko's face turned serious. From the aura he sensed, his heart was heavy. Although this was Zhongzhou City, it was also the territory of the Sacred Mountain. As soon as Elder Binko's voice fell, his figure disappeared. In the main hall, everyone looked at each other. Then, with a wave of aura, one figure after another disappeared from the main hall. In the side hall, Su, Yi, and Merciless West sat upright, their faces calm. When the thunderous voice resounded, Merciless West raised her eyes slightly and said to Su, "It seems to be Old Man Guyue's voice. Looks like you'll be fine. This time, I owe Yuqian Palace a favor." Su, he said softly. Speaking of which, Yuqian Palace was not related to him. He only wanted to check his soul. This time, the Palace Master of Yuqian Palace, Old Man Guyue, personally came to the City Lord's mansion. This favor was not small. Zhongzhou City had been brightly lit recently. At night, there was still a sea of people. Many people could not find an inn to stay in, so they could only stay outside. Suddenly, that loud shout resounded like thunder and spread out from the City Lord's mansion. It immediately caused a great uproar, and countless people immediately paid attention to it. It seems to be the City Lord's mansion. So the people of Yuqian Palace came to the City Lord's mansion. All of a sudden, the wave-like figures surged towards the City Lord's mansion from all directions like a tide. At this moment, the City Lord's mansion was even more lively. Guards wearing armor and holding sabers, spears, swords, and halberds were on standby. The originally fierce aura on their bodies was now a little flustered. Looking at the sky, their expressions changed greatly. Oh, outside the City Lord's mansion, the light was dazzling. Many ferocious and huge savage beasts were entrenched, roaring and emitting fierce auras. At this moment, there were more than a dozen figures standing in the air. Their resplendent Yuan Qi radiance was like the sun in the sky, rendering the city governor's mansion as bright as day. Their auras were even more monstrous and surging, seeming to cause the wind to rise and clouds to surge. These 10 figures standing in the air, each of their auras was more powerful than the last. Cool Craftsman Network's only WG Genuine A, the others. As are all pirated X, if Su Yi was here, he would be able to recognize the Palace Master of Yuqian Palace, Old Man Guyue. Beside Old Man Gu, were Vice Patriarch Guanlan, Vice Patriarch Yin Ding, and Vice Patriarch Yin Lu. The silhouette of the Green Emperor was among them as well. Green light shone brightly as his eyes were filled with coldness. This is the City Lord's mansion. The guards of the City Lord's mansion were originally very fierce, but at this moment, under the suppression of this invisible aura, their hearts were palpitating and their hair stood on end. The Yuqian Palace badges on the figures' bodies were enough to let them know that these were the most terrifying experts in Yuqian Palace. So what if we break in? The Green Emperor said in a deep voice. He couldn't wait any longer. He rushed down, stomped his foot, and waved his sleeves, sending out a green light. Bang, bang, bang. The figures were instantly sent flying, crashing into the City Lord's mansion. The ground shook as they fell, and they spat out blood. Trespassing into the City Lord's mansion. Kill without mercy. The guards gritted their teeth and shouted, but the figures cowered and didn't dare to step forward. If you don't hand over my master, let's see who's going to kill you. The Green Emperor bellowed as he waved his hand. A large amount of green light shot out like lightning once again. Don't be presumptuous in Zhongzhou City. The gloomy voice rang out, and a figure rushed out from the City Lord's mansion. An icy aura spread out, causing the temperature inside and outside of the City Lord's mansion to plummet. Boom! An icy hand, as if carrying the energy of heaven and earth, blocked the Green Emperor's attack. Crackle! The attack of the Green Emperor was fended off directly as a frosty aura gushed out from him. A powerhouse! The expression on the Green Emperor's face changed. A tinge of blood-red color appeared in his bright green eyes. Gradually, it looked like two blood moons were hidden in them. The green light on his body surged and turned into a long green river that swept out. Only then did he manage to resist the icy cold chi. How dare a member of the demon clan act so presumptuously in Zhongzhou City? The voice seemed to carry a chill, and when it fell into the ears, it was like a chill that froze one's soul. The figure of a newcomer appeared. It was Elder Bingxiao. His eyes were gloomy and sharp. Sensing the aura of the Green Emperor, he threw out a punch covered in icy aura. Crackle! Wherever the fist passed, the ripples in the void froze, and snowflakes fell from the void all around. To affect the energy of heaven and earth, what kind of strength was this? It was terrifyingly powerful. Humph, Bingxiao, you're so arrogant. A faint old snort came out. A figure quietly appeared in front of the Green Emperor, and a hand shot out to block the punch. The two collided, and suddenly the sky was filled with light. The void rumbled, and the ground shook. Crack, crack. The entire City Lord's mansion was shaking, and cracks spread out on the ground. At this moment, the two seemed to be controlling their strength, and not much of it leaked out. Otherwise, the surrounding area would be razed to the ground, and who knows how many people would be seriously injured or even killed. Thud, thud. Elder Binko's footsteps staggered, and he rubbed against the ground and was shaken back a few steps. Only then did he stabilize his body and look at the former. The one who suddenly appeared in front of the Green Emperor was Elder Gyue. His old figure was in high spirits, and his face was ruddy. His silver-white hair was combed into a bun, and under his gray robe, his eyes fell on Elder Bingxiao. Elder Gyue. Looking at Gyue in front of him, Elder Binko's surprised expression suddenly turned serious. How could he not recognize Elder Gyue in front of him? This was a terrifying master. Whoosh whoosh. In Zhongzhou City, figures came one after another, and the first was Ouyang Yuanfeng, Quang Galan, Elder Qian, and other experts. Ouyang Jinwei, the light cyan-haired man, Chu Zhonghuan, and the others also came out. Everyone's eyes immediately looked at the lineup in front of them, and their expressions changed. Especially Ouyang Yuanfeng, Elder Qian, and the others, who frowned. They were most afraid of people from the Heavenly Command Palace, but they didn't expect it to really be people from the Heavenly Command Palace. More importantly, it was actually the Palace Lord Gyue and the 3 Vice Palace Lords of the Heavenly Command Palace. This kind of lineup was really extraordinary. Not to mention the difficulty of dealing with the Heavenly Command Palace. Even if they directly attacked, they knew the strength of Palace Lord Gyue, Guanlan, and the other 2 Vice Palace Lords. Even with Elder Bingxiao, they probably couldn't resist. So it's Palace Lord Gyue and the 3 Vice Palace Lords, Guanlan, Yinding, and Yin Lu. I wonder why the palace lords personally came to the city lord's mansion. Chapter 720. City Lord Ouyang, your position as the City Lord of Central State City is really grand. For no reason at all, you disqualified my Imperial Palace's disciples from participating in the Sacred Martial Assembly and took away my people. If you don't give me an explanation today, I'm afraid others will think that my Imperial Palace is easy to bully. Vice Palace Master Guanlan's voice landed on the ground. He stood beside Palace Master Guyue and looked straight at Ouyang Yuanfeng. What is Vice Palace Master Guanlan saying? There must be a misunderstanding. Since things had already reached this point, what else could Ouyang Yuanfeng say? He could only laugh it off and hope that this matter could be turned into a small one. Misunderstanding? That's easy for you to say. In front of everyone's eyes, you clearly know that he is a disciple of my Imperial Palace, yet you don't put my Imperial Palace in your eyes. I wonder if this is City Lord Ouyang's idea or the Sacred Mountain's idea. Vice Palace Master Yin Lu also landed on the ground. The faint red light in his eyes was like flames. There was an invisible burning aura fluctuating, directly resisting the surrounding cold aura released by Elder Bingqiao. The air was filled with white smoke from time to time, making sizzling sounds. It was very mysterious. This, Ouyang Yuanfeng was speechless. He was the City Lord of Central State City, but he clearly knew how difficult it was to deal with these people in front of him. Not to mention the Vice Palace Masters, he was already difficult to deal with. Who would have thought that even Palace Master Guyue, who rarely showed himself, would personally come? This matter involved the Sacred Mountain at this moment. If he said anything wrong, even the Sacred Mountain would have some trouble. Even Heavenly Command Palace can't go too far, right? That brat Isu seriously injured my son. How vicious and merciless was he? He stopped the guards of our Central Continent City, not putting our Central Continent City in his eyes. Don't forget, this is still Central Continent City. Kuang Guilan gritted her teeth, her eyes filled with coldness. After all, this was still Central State City, and the Sacred Mountain was the master. According to what I know, it was clearly the son of the Central Continent City Lord who was arrogant and despotic. He was arrogant and rude first, and that was why he was taught a lesson. What a good way to say that my Imperial Heavenly Palace bullies others. Forget it, my Imperial Heavenly Palace won't do anything today. You really think that my Imperial Heavenly Palace can be bullied and humiliated by others? Old Man Guyue stared at Kuang Guilan. His face, which was as kind as an old man next door, suddenly changed. A faint chilling aura shot out. An invisible aura spread, causing Kuang Guilan's heart to palpitate for no reason. Disciples of Command Heavenly Palace, listen up. Raise the City Lord Manor to the ground. An aged yet forceful voice sounded, directly resounding through Central Continent City's night sky. Boom! Oh, in an instant, the auras of the Imperial Celestial Palace's experts surged to the air. Their vital chi swept out, and light filled the sky. The night sky was dyed in color. Powerful savage beasts roared as their demonic chi soared into the sky, causing the entire City Lord's mansion to shake. Boom! Outside the City Lord's mansion, Elder Chi and the others' expressions changed drastically. Many experts of the City Lord mansion were already outside. Seeing the situation, they had no choice but to get ready to take action. Among them, several powerful Origin Emperor experts soared into the sky and were fully alert. Guanlan, Yun Ding, and Yin Lu, the three Vice Palace Masters, snorted coldly and formed hand seals. Three surges of aura soared into the sky, extremely terrifying. You think I'm afraid of you? The Green Emperor couldn't hold it in any longer. His eyes glowed with green light and gradually turned into two blood-red moons. His body began to swell and emit green light. Then, with a frightening sound, he rushed up and turned into a huge-sounding snake that was hundreds of feet long, coiling outside the City Lord's mansion. The Ming snake was ferocious, and its entire body was covered in green scales. Its four wings flapped like bells, and its aura was fierce. Its blood-red eyes were terrifying, and its aura was monstrous, making people's hearts go numb. Snake Body. Elder Bing Xiao, Ouyang Yuanfeng, Elder Qian, and the others were all moved by this Mingxia's appearance. All the experts could see that this sounding snake was not simple. The Sounding Snake clan was also a famous clan in the entire demon race. Swoosh, swoosh, with such a shocking movement, some figures suddenly appeared at low altitude in some secluded places around Zhongzhou City. Surges of obscure aura suddenly filled the air, and pairs of eyes emitted dazzling light in the night sky. Many young people leaped to high altitude and looked in the direction of the City Lord Mansion. Each of them had an extraordinary temperament. If Su Yi was here, he would definitely recognize many of them. Among them were Gong Qianxing and Lu Xiaohu of the Heavenly Xian sect, and Li Qingwei of the Blue Cloud sect. At a certain low altitude, a short figure was floating in the air. His face was slightly old, around 60 or 70 years old. There were faint wrinkles on his face, as if they were traces left behind by the passage of time. However, the outline of his face was solid, and it could be seen that when he was young, he must have been a handsome man. However, his figure was as thin as an 8 or 9-year-old child, only half the height of an ordinary person. This short figure stood at a low altitude, looking in the direction of the City Lord Mansion. There was a hint of doubt in his eyes as he said, "Why is that old man Gyue fighting with the sacred mountain?" Both inside and outside the City Lord Mansion, the wind and clouds were surging, and the atmosphere was suffocating. Kuang Guilon's expression changed greatly. How could she have thought that a single sentence would cause Palace Lord Gyue to be angry, to the point of directly starting a war? Misunderstanding. This is definitely a misunderstanding. Elder Bing Xiao couldn't hold back anymore. Once Central Continent City and Heavenly Drive Palace went to war, it would be a matter of the entire Sacred Mountain and Heavenly Drive Palace's headquarters. These people from Heavenly Drive Palace were definitely not to be trifled with. Looking at Old Man Gyue, Elder Bing Xiao squeezed out a smile and cupped his fists. "Palace Lord Gyue, there must be a misunderstanding. After this matter is investigated, we will definitely give Heavenly Command Palace an explanation. Bing Xiao, I'll give you face. Take them back to Heavenly Command Palace the same way you took them away. If they lose a single hair, don't blame me for being impolite. I'm afraid that even 10 Bing Xiaos won't be able to bear the consequences." Old Man Gyue looked at Elder Bing Xiao indifferently and said, "As for bullying my Heavenly Command Palace disciple, I'll remember this debt. If you need someone to go to Sacred Mountain to seek justice, my Heavenly Command Palace will naturally send someone. Men, immediately invite them out." Bing Xiao's face was green and red as he yelled. Old Man Gyue's words made his heart jump. Elder Bing Xiao still remembered the Gemini sect incident. At that time, Gemini sect suffered a great loss in front of Heavenly Command Palace. If this matter really alarmed Heavenly Command Palace, then he really wouldn't be able to take responsibility. Elder Bing Xiao, Heavenly Command Palace has gone too far. You must seek justice for my son. Hearing this, Kuang Guilon's expression changed greatly. This Elder Bing Xiao just said that he would seek justice for her son. If she handed him over now, then she wouldn't be able to get revenge in the future. Shut up, it's not your turn to speak here. You didn't teach your son well. When the time comes, I will naturally report to the sect. Elder Bing Xiao looked at Kuang Guilon's yelling and frowned. This woman still couldn't understand the situation. Old Man Gyue, Yin Ding, Yin Lu, and Guan Lan, the 4 palace lords of Heavenly Command Palace, came out together. This kind of lineup was enough to prove that this kid wasn't ordinary to Heavenly Command Palace. The rumor was most likely true. It was very likely that he was a true Heavenly Command soul that surpassed half a step into Heavenly Command Palace, which was why Heavenly Command Palace placed such importance on him. This kind of youth, let alone him, even if they were in Sacred Mountain, they wouldn't dare to touch him. If he angered Heavenly Command Palace, the entire Sacred Mountain would have to reconsider if they could bear the consequences. Shut up. Ouyang Yuanfeng also immediately yelled at Kuang Guilin. It was all because of this woman's pampering since young that caused this kind of trouble for her son. Today's situation couldn't be more obvious. He, Ouyang Yuanfeng, as the city lord of Central State City, couldn't provoke Heavenly Command Palace. Elder Qi, quickly invite them out quickly, Ouyang Yuanfeng said. He could only let them go. Yes. Elder Qi immediately nodded and hurried into the city lord mansion. Palace Lord Gyue, everything is a misunderstanding. Why don't we go in and have a cup of tea? Elder Bingxiao forced a smile on his face, but his heart was sullen. He was a dignified elder of Sacred Mountain. Although he wasn't the only elder from Sacred Mountain who came to this sacred martial assembly, he was the leader. In the outside world, he, Elder Bingxiao, had always been respected and treated with respect, but today's attitude was already enough. He had never lowered himself like this before. Forget about drinking tea, Old Man Gyue said faintly. Then, he didn't even bother to look around and actually close his eyes. Elder Binko's face was very ugly. Because of this, he couldn't help but twitch. Old Man Gyue didn't put him his heart at all. What kind of beast is that? Ming Snake. That's an expert of the Ming Snake clan, a Demon Emperor realm expert of the Ming Snake clan. Outside the City Lord Mansion, in the streets and alleys, there was a tide of people weaving together. Countless eyes looked up and stared at the giant snake in the void. That monstrous green light and monstrous demonic aura filled the void, shocking people's souls. So many experts. Those are all experts of Yuqian Palace. You can't see them normally. Why did Yuqian Palace send so many experts to surround the City Lord Mansion? What's going on? Can't you tell? If for the Bawang's sex disciple, Yisu. It said that Yisu previously injured the City Lord Mansion's second young master, Ouyang Mingjie, and is wanted by the City Lord Mansion. That's why Yuqian Palace is surrounding the City Lord Mansion. So that's how it is. Bawang's sex Yisu. Is it the Dark Horse? It said that he's a soul controller. When he was testing his soul, he caused a vision of heaven and earth. The City Lord Mansion kicked a steel plate this time. I originally thought that the Bawang sex Su Yi was an unknown person. There was a lot of discussion in the surroundings. Countless eyes were fixed on the City Lord Mansion. These discussions couldn't escape the ears of Ouyang Yuanfeng, Elder Bingxiao, and the other experts. Their faces didn't look too good. Not long after, several figures walked out of the City Lord Mansion. Swoosh, swoosh. One by one, the gazes suddenly turned towards them. Chapter 721. Under the gazes of the crowd, two figures walked out. One was an old man with a plain appearance. The other was a young man around 18 or 19 years old. He looked simple and honest, and his eyes were clear and deep. This is Yisu from the Bawang sect. Looking at the young man's appearance, Elder Bingxiao, Wang Chuanda, Ouyang Yuanfeng, and the others all looked at him with slight surprise. The surroundings of the mayor's mansion were already crowded with onlookers. Their gazes fell on Su Yi with some disbelief. Yisu, that Yisu from the Bawang sect. Rumor has it that the Yisu who caused the soul testing stone to explode in the soul test. That Yisu who severely injured Ouyang Mingjie? It said that Yisu is only 16 years old. Isn't he a little mature? Outside the mayor's mansion, countless people's gazes were secretly moving. Many of them were stunned. This type of youth who didn't look that ugly, rather pleasing to the eye, but wasn't all that outstanding, was actually the Yisu who stirred up a storm in Central Continent City in just a single day, his reputation becoming great? Is this guy Yisu? Outside the mayor's mansion, a group of young men and women gathered together in the crowd. A black-robed young man looked at Su Yi through the gaps of the crowd and said softly. This black-robed young man was not old, but he had a sense of age that was not proportional to his age. At such a young age, he was already slender, with sword-like eyebrows, phoenix eyes, a straight nose, and thin lips. His clear eyes were clear, as if they did not contain a trace of distracting thoughts and vulgarity. He was so delicate that he was more like a harmless little brother next door. If Su Yi noticed him at this moment, how could he not recognize him? Who else could this guy be other than Situ Muyang from the Shunjian Gate? At this moment, if Su Yi were to see this group of young men and women, his heart would probably be in turmoil. Beside Situ Muyang was a young girl with a graceful and slender figure. She looked to be around 16 or 17 years old. Her black hair was tied up behind her head, and her orange clothes fluttered in the wind. She possessed an otherworldly temperament. However, a few strands of long hair fell to the side of her forehead, giving her a wild temperament. It was Muyao. There were also Sakura, Asaka, Gongqi, Nanli Ran, Ryugan River, and several other familiar faces. They were all outside the City Lord Mansion. If this person really has a heaven-rank soul, then he will be very terrifying. 3Z knew why fastest up equals carrot. Muyao looked at the young man who walked out of the City Lord's mansion. Her red lips were tender, and her eyes were as clear as water. She gave off a moving sense of beauty. A heaven-grade soul is something that only exists in legends. Is there really such a terrifying soul? Sakura Asaka's heart trembled. A heaven-grade soul was something that only existed in legends. There's no smoke without fire. I heard that Elder by Mingshan brought Si Shiyuan and the others to test it. I saw it with my own eyes. Gong Chi spoke, and his phoenix eyes flickered with a faint green brilliance. It seems like it's true. That Isu should be a dark horse in this sacred martial assembly. Guchinyu spoke. His tall and slender figure was very eye-catching in the crowd. His eyebrows were sharp like knives, and his pitch-black eyes flickered with a scarlet color in the night. It said that many people are extraordinary this time. The Blue Cloud sect has Li Qingwei, the Heavenly Profound sect has Gong Qianxing, the Beast Emperor sect has Xiao Sijun, and so on. Oh, Luo's figure was straight, and his sharp eyes were like swords in the night. His elegant and handsome face was looking at the young man who walked out of the City Lord's mansion. If Junior Martial Uncle was here, what would we be afraid of? Situ Muyang spoke. His eyes were a little gloomy, and his brows were slightly furrowed. It's a pity that Gong Chi's charming face also had a trace of gloominess. When that young man was mentioned, everyone's face changed, and they suddenly became silent. The ones who walked out of the City Lord's mansion were Su Yi and Merciless West. Under the guidance of the Elder, Su Yi and Merciless West didn't say anything. This was the Central State City, the City Lord's mansion of the Central State City. It's this brat who injured Mingjia. Ouyang Jinwei stared at Su Yi, and at this moment, her eyes also focused on Su Yi. A faint cold smile rose from the corner of her red lips, carrying a kind of arrogance. Seriously injuring her brother, and at this moment causing the Central State City and the Sacred Mountain to lose face. Naturally, she didn't have a good impression of the person in front of her. If there was a chance, she didn't mind getting back her face. As Sui walked out, Kwang Guilan's eyes had long since surged with coldness. Her son was her flesh and blood, and because of this brat, she was actually scolded in public by Elder Bing Qiu and her husband. How could she endure this in her heart? Sui walked out and looked around. His eyes immediately fell on Palace Lord Gyue, Guanlan, Yin Lu, and Yun Ding, the three vice palace lords, as well as many experts of the Heavenly Command Palace. Sensing the hostile atmosphere, Su Yi knew what had happened and immediately felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Without any connection, the Heavenly Command Palace was willing to help. Su Yi would remember this kindness in his heart. Master. The Green Emperor's huge body immediately withdrew. Seeing Su Yi and Merciless West walk out, he immediately landed in front of Su Yi and bowed. Greetings to Palace Lord Gyue, the three vice palace lords, and all the seniors. Su Yi nodded to the Green Emperor and immediately bowed before Gyue, Guanlan, Yun Ding, and Yin Lu. He also bowed to the experts of the Heavenly Command Palace, feeling grateful. It's good that you're fine. Go back to the Heavenly Command Palace first. Palace Lord Gyue smiled and patted Su Yi's shoulder. It's all a misunderstanding. It's good that you're fine. Elder Bing Qiu's eyes slightly moved. He took a few steps forward and stood next to Su Yi and Gyue. He looked at Sue-yi seriously and said, as expected of a young talent with outstanding talent. This is also the saying, no discord, no concord. This proves that this little brother and our sacred mountain are fated. Sacred mountain. Hearing the two words, sacred mountain, Sue-yi's heart couldn't help but tremble. His gaze immediately fell on Elder Bing Chio's body. Such an old man had an invisible aura. Sue-yi's sharp soul force clearly sensed that this was a terrifying expert. Sweeping his gaze, Sue-yi looked behind Elder Bing Chio. The several old and middle-aged men were all experts. Suddenly, a young man with light blue hair and a calm expression looked straight at him. His calm gaze made Sue-yi's heart jump for no reason. The more he looked at this young man, the more hazy Sue-yi felt. It was as if the figure had become illusory for no reason. Filled with a hazy radiance, his aura was mysterious and powerful, causing one's soul to tremble. His pair of eyes also became incomparably deep, like flowing deep holes. The scene inside was terrifying, emitting a faint light, incomparably frightening. It affects the soul. Sue-yi felt it, and he shouted to himself in his heart. Immediately, the Origin Supreme technique in his body secretly operated. A scarlet light flashed in his eyes and directly shot towards the light blue-haired young man. At this moment, the light blue-haired young man's calm gaze suddenly changed. He was inwardly moved. Sue-yi's gaze swept over one after another. When he saw an old man in his 50s among the Sacred Mountain crowd, his gaze suddenly trembled fiercely. A chill shot out from his eyes. How could Sue-yi forget this old man? Even if he turned into ashes, he would still recognize him. It was Wang Chuanda of the Sacred Mountain. Back then, the one who seriously injured his grandfather Su Yuntian and pushed him down the cliff was none other than Wang Chuanda. Fortunately, he survived. Wang Chuanda was also curiously sizing up Sue-yi, but for some reason, when he suddenly saw the chill in the young man's eyes, he felt a chill in his heart. Little brother, after the Sacred Martial Assembly, I wonder if you would be interested in visiting my sacred mountain? Elder Eyespot looked at Sue-yi and asked. He had taken the initiative to throw out an olive branch. Such a young soul controller with a very likely heaven-rank soul was worthy of being roped in by the sacred mountain. Listening to Elder Eyespot's words, Quan Guelon's gaze became even colder. How many people wanted to go to the sacred mountain? That was the holy land and paradise of the Central Plains martial artists. Elder Eyespot was clearly trying to rope in this boy. Haha, Sacred Mountain, I'm not interested. Sue-yi came back to his senses and restrained the look in his eyes. Although his enemy was right in front of him, Sue-yi also knew that he was still powerless today. With his own strength, his big brother Merciless West, and the Green Emperor, it was impossible to kill Wang Chuanda. Hearing Sue-yi's words and such a blunt refusal, Elder Eyespot's eyes darkened. Not to mention Elder Eyespot, the entire city was in an uproar. Many people were dumbfounded. Although Sue-yi had the protection of Yutian Palace, he was still an elder of the Sacred Mountain. This time's Sacred Martial Assembly was still led by the Sacred Mountain. Everyone participated in the Sacred Martial Assembly in order to make a name for themselves and obtain the opportunity to enter the Sacred Mountain to cultivate. The elders of the Holy Mountain had extended such an olive branch in advance, but Sue-yi didn't even look them in the eye. Not only did he reject them directly, but he also didn't put the elders of the Holy Mountain in his eyes. Haha, young man, sometimes you don't have to answer too early. Talent is one thing, growth is another. How many peerless geniuses have achieved nothing in the end, just like a flash in the pan? Elder Binko's complexion flickered between green and red, and his gaze became a bit colder. Although Isu's talent was outstanding, in front of him, those holy sons and holy daughters of the Holy Mountain had never been so rude to him. Talent was one thing, but future growth was another. How many peerless geniuses had shaken the world, but in the end, they had achieved nothing, just like a flash in the pan, or died prematurely, turning into ashes. Don't worry about it. You should worry more about the disciples of the Sacred Mountain. Sue-yi said indifferently. He had no feelings for the Sacred Mountain, plus the matter of Central Continent City. And now that Wang Chuanda was in front of him, if not for the fact that Su Yi was very clear that his strength was far from enough, he would have lost his patience long ago. Elder Eye Spot was stunned, his complexion turning even uglier. He was a dignified elder of the sacred mountain, yet he was looked down upon by this young man again and again. He felt somewhat embarrassed. Chapter 722. Young man, don't be too arrogant. You should know that there is always someone better than you. Secretly exhaling, Elder Bing Chao's expression calmed down. With his status, there was no need for him to act like this with a brat. Although this brat's talent was worthy of being roped in by the sacred mountain, if he didn't know how to appreciate kindness, it was clear that he was hostile to the sacred mountain. An enemy with such talent, once he grew up, would be a future threat to the sacred mountain. So, he didn't mind nipping this thread in the bud. As his voice faded, an invisible aura shrouded Su Yi from Elder Bing Chao's body. Under the guidance of this invisible aura, the surrounding temperature plummeted, and the air suddenly froze. The invisible aura collapsed, causing the Green Emperor and Merciless West's expressions to change drastically. This aura made their hearts tremble. This sacred mountain elder's strength was far above theirs. Cool Tea Craftsman % Net 9V Genuine Premier 7. Bing Chao, don't you understand? You should worry about your own disciple first. Palace Master Gyue's aged voice faintly spread out, and an invisible aura spread out, immediately resisting the icy aura. This caused Elder Bing Chao's expression to change. With Old Man Gyue's intervention, there was no way to deal with this brat today. Bullying the young with your age, what kind of skill is that? So he looked at Elder Bing Chao. Everyone from the Sacred Mountain was good. If it weren't for Palace Master Gyue, Bing Chao would have shamelessly attacked him. Berated by Su Yi to his face, Bing Chao's face turned ashen and completely gloomy. Something doesn't seem right. Does this Isu have some grudge with the Sacred Mountain? He's a little arrogant. He even dares to offend an elder of the Sacred Mountain. The surrounding crowd discussed animatedly, and many people were surprised. Elder, this disciple has something to say? Suddenly, Ouyang Jinwei stood out from the crowd, took a few steps forward, and bowed to Elder Bing Chao. Why don't you just say it? Elder Bing Chao was a little embarrassed. Hearing this, he nodded and said to Ouyang Jinwei. Ouyang Jinwei's gaze then fell on Su Yi. She glanced at Su Yi and continued. This Isu is relying on the protection of the Heavenly Palace to not put our sacred mountain in his eyes. He also doesn't put you in his eyes. Elder Bing too, you are naturally magnanimous and don't want to lower yourself to the same level as a junior. However, as a disciple of the Sacred Mountain, no one can allow anyone to be disrespectful to the Sacred Mountain. Thus, this disciple boldly wishes to fight this Isu in order to protect the reputation of our Sacred Mountain. Elder Bing too, please approve. When Ouyang Jinwei's voice fell, many people's gazes shifted. Ouyang Jinwei, she actually wants to fight Isu. I'm afraid there's going to be a show to watch. All of a sudden, the surrounding people started to discuss excitedly. Those who wanted to watch a good show didn't mind blowing things up. Naturally, they wanted to see a good show. Not to mention, this was a show between the Sacred Mountain and the Heavenly Palace. Ouyang Jinwei, she seems to be a direct disciple of the Sacred Mountain. In a corner of the crowd, among the disciples of the Shenzhen Gate, Gongqi raised her eyebrows and the corners of her mouth rose. Yes, this Ouyang Jinwei is said to be very strong and has a very high status in the Sacred Mountain. She is also the daughter of the Zhongzhou city's lord, Ouyang Yuanfeng, and the elder sister of Ouyang Mingjie, who was seriously injured by Isu. Sakura, Asaka said. The disciples of the Sacred Mountain this time. The Shenzhen Gate also received some news, and she remembered it in her heart. This Ouyang Jinwei is quite scheming. She wants to avenge her brother, Ryugan River said indifferently. His eyes looked at the youth outside the city lord's mansion and said, Third rank early stage soul controller, heaven grade soul, I wonder how strong he is. Let's see. Situ Miang stood on his tiptoes and looked ahead with great interest. She wants to fight. When Ouyang Jinwei's voice fell, Su Yi's eyes also moved. This woman actually wanted to fight with him. Hearing Ouyang Jinwei's words, Ouyang Yuanfeng, Kuang Guilan, and the others' eyes moved. They looked at Su Yi without saying anything, as if they wanted to know Su Yi's attitude. This, Elder Bingqiao thought for a moment. There was no harm in letting Ouyang Jinwei fight. At least they could know how strong this boy was. With Ouyang Jinwei's strength, even if they took a step back, she would absolutely not lose. And if she could win, the Sacred Mountain's face would be saved today, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Palace Lord Guyue, this misunderstanding is also a misunderstanding of the younger generation. Ouyang Jinwei is also Ouyang Mingjia's elder sister and wants to exchange pointers with Yisu. Let the younger generation solve their own problems. What do you think? With a thought, Elder Bingqiao suddenly looked at Old Man Guyue and said, squeezing out a smile on his face, "This little girl is young, but her cultivation is not bad." Old Man Guyue's eyes narrowed slightly, looking at Ouyang Jinwei, and faintly said, then looked at Su Yi next to him. How could Old Man Guyue not see that Ouyang Jinwei was not an ordinary person? Looking at Binko's confident expression, he knew that Ouyang Jinwei's strength was definitely not ordinary. But today, although Yuqian Palace did not fear the Sacred Mountain, Old Man Guyue also knew that they could not completely not give face to the Sacred Mountain. After all, this was Zhongzhou City, the Sacred Mountain's territory. If Yisu was a true disciple of Yuqian Palace, then there was no need to say anything. Yuqian Palace was strong enough to fight the Sacred Mountain without fear. But in fact, Su Yi was not a true disciple of Yuqian Palace. At this moment, Old Man Guyue also had some misgivings. But if the two fought and Yisu lost, the Sacred Mountain would not be lenient, and Yisu would be humiliated. Although Yisu's soul quality was there, and he was also an early 3rd-rank soul controller, this was after all the result of the test, and not true battle strength. Presumably, Ouyang Jinwei and Bingqiao already knew the result of Su Yi's test. If they dared to take the initiative to fight, then they naturally had absolute confidence. After a moment of hesitation, Old Man Guyue looked at Su Yi and said, Yisu, you can decide for yourself. Guyue could only let Yisu decide. Su Yi's eyes were calm. Old Man Guyue's words just now, especially mentioning that Ouyang Jinwei was not ordinary, was already secretly telling him to pay attention to Ouyang Jinwei. Sensing that Ouyang Jinwei was deliberately restraining her aura, it was not difficult for Su Yi to know that this woman was not ordinary. Suddenly, many eyes locked onto Su Yi, waiting for Su Yi's answer. They did not know if Su Yi dared to fight the dignified Sacred Mountain's direct disciple, Ouyang Jinwei. The atmosphere fell into a brief silence, but Green Emperor and Merciless West did not care at all. Amidst this silence, Ouyang Jinwei also took 2 steps forward. Her eyes were filled with arrogance and indifference as she stared at Su Yi. Her red lips slightly parted, revealing 2 rows of pearly white teeth. Her clear and cold voice was clear and melodious as she said, Sacred Mountains, Ouyang Jinwei, if you don't dare to fight, I won't force you. Leave early. I'm afraid there's no need to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. Looking at Ouyang Jinwei, Su Yi's eyes flickered slightly. Today, Old Man Guyue of the Heavenly Palace stood up for him, but at this moment, if he did not agree to fight, not only would he not go, but he would also lose the reputation of the Heavenly Palace and Old Man Guyue. What's more, how could Su Yi fear a Sacred Mountain's disciple? His goal in this Sacred Martial Assembly was to sweep through all the outstanding heroes, especially the Sacred Mountain's disciples. If he couldn't even defeat the Sacred Mountain's younger generation, how could he set foot on the Sacred Mountain in the future? Not to mention, although Ouyang Jinwei was extraordinary, she was definitely not the strongest leader of the Sacred Mountain's younger generation. Thinking of this, Su Yi's battle intent surged in his heart. He looked straight at Ouyang Jinwei and said, "As you wish, let's fight." Su Yi's voice was not mixed with yuan qi, but it was still loud and clear. Suddenly, there was an uproar in the surroundings. Countless eyes secretly moved. This time, the Dark Horse and Ouyang Jinwei of the Sacred Mountain will fight in advance. I wonder who will win and who will lose. This Isu is not simple. He's a beginner third-grade soul controller. Ouyang Jinwei is not simple either. It's said that she's also very famous on the Sacred Mountain, ranked very high. It seems that no matter who wins this battle, it will be very exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. The Sacred Martial Assembly hasn't even started yet, but the battle has already been brought forward. A commotion broke out. Su Yi's acceptance of the battle made many curious and expectant. Seeing Isu accept the battle without hesitation, Old Man Gyue, Vice Palace Master Guanlan, and the others were slightly surprised. They felt that this little guy's heart seemed to be full of confidence. Not to mention the outcome of the battle, he was not afraid in front of the Sacred Mountain at all. This state of mind and courage was not something an ordinary person could possess. Let's not talk about how you'll lose. Just the fact that you dared to accept the battle has already made me look at you in a new light. But since we're going to fight, let's raise the stakes. Ouyang Jinwei looked at Su Yi, her eyes full of cold arrogance. The corner of her mouth slightly raised, looked indifferently at Su Yi, and continued, "You think that you can ignore everything just because you have the protection of the Imperial Palace, but you don't know that even if you have some talent, you're just a clown. You and I will fight. If you lose, kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times, and if I lose, you can name the stakes yourself." Ouyang Jinwei's voice was cold and arrogant. She did not put Su Yi in her heart at all. This person seriously injured her brother, ignored the Sacred Mountain, and dared to accept the battle. It was a good opportunity to teach him a lesson. As for the outcome, Ouyang Jinwei was confident. Even if an unknown disciple of the Bawang sect had some talent and was a third-grade soul controller, she had absolute confidence in herself. Does Su Yi dare to accept the stakes? Chapter 723. Today, Palace Master Gyue of the Yuqian Palace had personally stepped forward to humiliate both Palace Master Gyue and Palace Master Gyue. This Ouyang Jinwei is really vicious. In the crowd, among the Shunjian Gate disciples, Gongqi raised her eyebrows, her beautiful eyes filled with disdain. At this moment, everyone could see that Ouyang Jinwei was trying to goad Isu into accepting the challenge. At this moment, Isu had no choice but to accept the bet. Let's see how this brat dies." Kwang Guilin snorted coldly, her eyes cold. She knew her daughter's strength very well. She wanted to see how this brat died this time, and he would definitely pay the price. Elder Bing Xiao, Wang Chuanda, and the other experts of the Sacred Mountain secretly smiled. Ouyang Jinwei didn't disappoint them, as expected of one of the most valued disciples of the Sacred Mountain. If Isu accepted the bet, then after he lost, he would kowtow in front of everyone, and that would be enough to humiliate the Yuqian Palace. But if Isu didn't accept the bet, then it would be considered as a coward, and the Sacred Mountain would regain their face. Therefore, whether Isu agreed to the bet or not, it would help the Sacred Mountain regain their face and suppress the Yuqian Palace. Hearing Ouyang Jinwei's words, Gyue, Palace Master Guanlan, and the others frowned inwardly. In the entire scene, the only 2 people who remained unmoved and even revealed a faint coldness in their eyes were Merciless West and Green Emperor. Merciless West and Green Emperor knew Su Yi's strength the best. Although Su Yi hadn't stepped into the Yuanjin realm, if they really fought, even an average Yuanjin realm first-layer cultivator wouldn't be able to stand up to him. Ouyang Jinwei would probably be crying in a while. Looking at the cold and arrogant Ouyang Jinwei, Su Yi's gaze also wavered. This woman was really vicious. There's still a bet? That's not bad. Looking at Ouyang Jinwei's cold and arrogant appearance and her scheming personality, Su Yi felt extremely disgusted. A trace of coldness flashed across his eyes before quickly disappearing. A faint smile appeared on his face as he looked straight at the former. How about this? If I lose, I will kowtow 3 times in front of everyone. But if you lose, my bet is also very simple. Tell me, what kind of bet? Ouyang Jinwei said coldly. How could she lose? She would definitely let this brat know what it meant to be a frog in a well. It's simple. Su Yi smiled faintly as he looked at Ouyang Jinwei's curvaceous body. His gaze purposely lingered on her towering chest as he said evilly, "If I win, you'll marry me. How about it?" When Su Yi's words came out, everyone was dumbfounded. Not only Ouyang Yuanfeng, Quang Galan, Elder Bing Xiao, Wang Xuanda, Chu Zhanghuan, Vice Palace Master Guan Lan, and Old Man Guiyue were dumbfounded. Even Merciless West and Green Emperor were dumbfounded. It turns out that this Yi Su is a lecher. He actually has ideas about Ouyang Jinwei. Ouyang Jinwei is the young miss of the Central Continent City's city lord, a direct disciple of the sacred mountain. Her status is not simple, and her status is extraordinary. She is also extremely beautiful. I don't know how many people are thinking about her. It turns out that Yi Su is also thinking about her. Yi Su, this brat, is very courageous. If he wins, he will gain both fame and fortune. The crowd was discussing animatedly. The liveliness today was getting more and more intense. It turns out that he is also a lecher. What a lecher! Among the young disciples of the Shinjian Gate, Sakura Asaka's beautiful eyes showed disdain. Originally, she had a good impression of Yi Su. He actually dared to compete with the sacred mountain. But in the end, this guy was still thinking about lecherous things. Suddenly, her good impression of him disappeared. Although he is lecherous, he has some guts. He actually has ideas about Ouyang Jinwei. Ordinary people don't dare. Ryugan River's eyes showed some appreciation. There were not many people who dared to have ideas about Ouyang Jinwei. Ouyang Jinwei heard all the discussions around her, and her cold gaze immediately landed on Su Yi. Her eyes were cold and arrogant as she sneered and mocked. A toad lusting after a swan's flesh. Do you have the right to do so? A toad doesn't have such qualifications. But eating swan meat is a toad's dream. If you don't dare, then forget it. Su Yi shrugged and said indifferently. His expression was regretful, and his gaze was fixed on the former's curvaceous figure. Although this woman was annoying, her figure was really well developed. She had a curvaceous front and back, exquisite and exquisite, with a towering chest. Under the palace robe, her white and deep cleavage was tempting, as if it was about to burst out. It was enough to make many men drool. You, staring at Yi Su, Ouyang Jinwei's eyes were cold. This brat actually dared to have ideas about her and take liberties with her in public. If she didn't make this brat pay the price today, then she wouldn't be called Ouyang Jinwei. Out of the corner of her eyes, Ouyang Jinwei glanced at the light cyan-robed young man behind her. Seeing his calm expression, she coldly glared at Su Yi, her eyes spitting fire. Gritting her teeth, she sneered, "Fine, I agree. If you win, I have nothing to say. But if you lose, not only will you have to kowtow 3 times, you will also have to cripple your own cultivation. I don't know if a toad like you dares or not." Cripple his own cultivation? Does this Yi Su still dare to accept the challenge? Cripple one's own cultivation. For a cultivator, this is worse than death. The discussions continued. Many people were surprised. This bet was getting bigger and bigger. For a cultivator, kowtowing was the greatest humiliation. However, to cripple one's own cultivation was truly worse than death. If one lost, crippling one's own cultivation was the same as gambling with one's own life. This Ouyang Jinwei seems to be really angry. Among the young disciples of the Shinjian Gate, Situ Muyang's clear eyes twitched. He was watching the show. Yi Su, that brat's lust knows no bounds. I'm afraid he's afraid now. Sakura Asaka raised her eyebrows. There was a hint of schadenfreude in her eyes. She didn't like that lecher. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Su Yi's expression was still indifferent. He looked at the cold and mocking Ouyang Jinwei and said indifferently, "I agree. If you lose, you will marry me. If I lose, I will cripple my own cultivation." He really agreed. He's got guts. The crowd was in an uproar. They didn't expect Isu to actually agree. This is a big bet. If he wins, Isu will have a meteoric rise. Ouyang Jinwei's status in the Sacred Mountain is not ordinary. Some busybodies were very excited. They had heard of Ouyang Jinwei's identity. She was an important disciple of the Sacred Mountain and had a great background. If Isu won and married Ouyang Jinwei, he would have a meteoric rise. Lustful, Sakura, Asaka said. Her eyes were full of disdain. Why are you so excited? Could it be that you've taken a fancy to Isu? Gongqi whispered in Sakura Asaka's ear with a smile. What are you talking about? That lecture is not even as good as Sui. Sakura Asaka rolled her eyes at Gongqi. In the field, seeing that Isu and Ouyang Jinwei both agreed to the bet, the atmosphere suddenly changed. Elder Bing Chao's expression did not change. It turned out that Isu was a lecher at such a young age. If he lost and crippled his own cultivation, it could be considered as eliminating a potential threat of the Sacred Mountain. Although the Sacred Mountain was not afraid of a brat, it was always good to kill him in the cradle. And if Isu could win, it proved that his talent and strength were absolutely extraordinary. Ouyang Jinwei was an important disciple of the Sacred Mountain, but if he could get this brat to join the Sacred Mountain, it could be considered killing two birds with one stone. This was a profit no matter how it was calculated. Whether the brat won or lost, the result was in his favor. This made Elder Bing Chao secretly smile. Of course, Bing Chao knew that how could Ouyang Jinwei lose? That was absolutely impossible. This time, the Yutian Palace's reputation would be greatly damaged. Brat, you're courting death. On the other hand, Kwang Guilan's eyes were cold. This was an excellent opportunity to avenge her son. The light cyan-haired youth was as calm as an ancient well, quietly watching everything, giving off a hazy feeling. On the other hand, Chu Zhonghuan's eyes were shining with interest. Good, you do have some courage. Ouyang Jinwei looked at Su Yi and waved her delicate hand. Immediately, the guards of the city lord's mansion all retreated, leaving a large empty space in the middle. With light steps, Ouyang Jinwei gracefully walked onto the field. Her face was cold and arrogant as she stared at Su Yi and said, "Come, be careful." Seeing this, Old Man Guyue's voice also whispered in Su Yi's ear. Su Yi turned sideways and bowed to Old Man Guyue. He knew that Old Man Guyue was worried about him and reminding him. After bowing, Su Yi turned around and let out a sigh of relief as he looked around. Ouyang Jinwei seems to be quite extraordinary among the younger generation of the Holy Mountain. Then let's fight. Su Yi took a step forward and raised his eyes. Under the attention of countless gazes and many obscure auras from all directions, he slowly walked onto the field. At this moment, Su Yi's hands were slightly bent and clenched into fists. It was difficult for him to calm down as battle intent quietly surged in his body. It's about to start. A dark horse, an early third-rank soul controller, is going to fight Holy Mountain's Ouyang Jinwei. PD looks at Original Version W Chapter J, Section U. Without a doubt, this battle was enough to attract the attention of many people. Isu's name had already spread throughout Central State City, causing an uproar. Without a doubt, Su Yi was already the strongest dark horse in this sacred martial assembly. Perhaps many people didn't know Ouyang Jinwei's name, but there were many who knew. Ouyang Jinwei was a direct disciple of the Holy Mountain. It was rumored that her position in the younger generation was not low. Just the title of a direct disciple of the Holy Mountain was enough to prove her strength. Chapter 724. This kind of battle was supposed to be seen at the end of the sacred martial assembly. But now, these two people were going to fight in advance. Many people were looking forward to it and were excited. Especially this battle. It was related to a huge bet. No matter where it was, there would always be people who were nosy. It was human nature to watch a show. This made people look forward to it even more. Obviously, the battle between Isu and Ouyang Jinwei at this moment was definitely regarded as an early warm-up for the Sacred Martial Assembly. It was going to start the Sacred Martial Assembly. That Isu is not simple. Jinwei is not young anymore. If he can really succeed with Jinwei, it will be good. Ouyang Yuanfeng transmitted his voice into Quang Guilan's ears. He had been silently surveying this young man, and from his formless aura, he could tell that even in front of so many experts, this young man was still as calm as ever. Just his mental state alone was already extraordinary. Ouyang Yuanfeng naturally knew the strength of his son, Ouyang Mingjie. Isu was able to severely injure Ouyang Mingjie in a few moves. This had already proved his strength. Taking a step back, if Ouyang Jinwei was defeated today, it would not be a particularly bad thing. So what if he is not simple? That kid is a toad who wants to eat swan meat. Not to mention Nalan. He is completely incomparable to Chu Zhonghuan. In the battle, it is inevitable that he will be injured or even killed in the battle. At that time, the people of Yuqian Palace will not be able to say anything. Quang Guilan transmitted her voice to her husband's ears. Her eyes flashed with coldness. That brat actually wanted to be a toad, lusting after a swan. That was a dream. Only Chu Zhonghuan, who was by her side, was worthy of her daughter. What did you do? Hearing this, Ouyang Yuanfeng was suddenly startled. He naturally knew his wife's character. What can I do? Quang Guilan was full of hatred. There were so many experts of Yuqian Palace. Even if she wanted to do something, she could not. She transmitted her voice to Ouyang Yuanfeng. I have secretly instructed Jinwei to not be merciful. What crippling her cultivation? She might as well do it herself. Mingjie must not be injured in vain. Ouyang Yuanfeng was slightly stunned and did not say anything more. If there were any injuries or losses during the duel, no one would be able to say anything. Under the attention of the surrounding people, the atmosphere in the square outside the city lord's mansion became tense for no reason. The clamor in the surroundings automatically quieted down. All eyes were fixed on the man and woman in the square, afraid that they would miss something. I heard that you did well in Driver Palace's test. That's why they value you. But if you think you can act arrogant in front of Sacred Mountain like that, then you're just a frog in a well. I've seen my fair share of soul controllers, and more than one of them have lost to me. Looking at Isu, Ouyang Jinwei was still as cold and arrogant as ever. Her lips curled into a mocking sneer as she deliberately raised her voice. She was a direct disciple of the Holy Mountain, and one of the most valued direct disciples. Back then, she was only one step away from joining that lineup. How could this brat in front of her compare to her? A soul controller? There were quite a few soul controllers on the Sacred Mountain, and she had definitely defeated more than one soul controller. So much nonsense. So what if you're a disciple of Sacred Mountain? I hope you won't be as weak as your brother. Oh no, that's not right. Your brother Ouyang Mingjie might be my brother-in-law soon. So we didn't care about Ouyang Jinwei at all. You're just a toad lusting after a swan. When she heard Su Yi's words, Ouyang Jinwei's expression immediately turned ugly, as if she had been pricked by a needle. She didn't think much of the kid in front of her, but the more Isu ignored her and treated her like this, the more she couldn't stand it. Ever since she was young, which young talent hadn't obeyed her every order and prostrated themselves before her? However, this ordinary-looking brat in front of her was so arrogant and didn't place her in his eyes. Ouyang Jinwei couldn't tolerate this. Swan meat? To be honest, among the women I've seen, there are countless who are more talented than you. There are countless who are prettier than you, and there are many who have a better temperament than you. What right do you have to say that you're swan meat? Su Yi looked at Ouyang Jinwei and said indifferently, "All right, I forgot to tell you. I already have a fiancé. Later, you can only be my concubine." Su Yi's words came out faintly. There was no yuan qi mixed in, but it still resounded through the entire place. It seemed to be intentional. This kind of woman was just like the White Lotus and Green Tea girls in his previous life. Su Yi didn't want to be polite at all. This Isu is really arrogant. Everyone's eyes flickered when they heard this tit for tat. This Isu really isn't ordinary when it comes to scolding others. He has some of the style of junior martial uncle. Situ Muyang, who was among the young disciples of the Xinjiang Gate, had a look of admiration in his clear eyes. Isu's style was very similar to junior martial uncles. I hope this lecture has the strength of Su Yi. Otherwise, he'll be in trouble later. MA Starter T9, Sakura Asaka, raised her eyebrows and said. Originally, she was very disgusted with Isu. However, after hearing his words, the feeling of disgust disappeared. She felt that Isu didn't seem to be a lecher. Su Yi's words were like needles piercing into Ouyang Jinwei's ears. The cold and arrogant look in her eyes gradually turned cold, and her expression became incomparably gloomy. Cold words came out from Ouyang Jinwei's red lips like a bone-chilling wind. Isu, you will pay the price for your arrogance and ignorance. Believe me, you will regret it. When these words fell, a golden light was released from Ouyang Jinwei's body. The metal attribute Yuan Qi was activated. It was sharp and murderous, surging and surging. Boom! In a short moment, with Ouyang Jinwei as the center, a golden wave swept out like a golden storm, shaking the surroundings and sending sand and stones flying. The terrifying murderous aura was accompanied by great pressure. This was the pressure of the cultivation method she cultivated. It wasn't an ordinary thing. At this moment, Ouyang Jinwei's beautiful eyes were completely covered by a faint golden light. The aura on her beautiful body was monstrous, causing the surroundings to change color. Very powerful. She's indeed extraordinary. Many experts present were secretly amazed. Ouyang Jinwei was indeed worthy of being the outstanding disciple of the Sacred Mountain's younger generation. To reach such strength at such a young age and be able to drive such an imposing aura with just the Yuan Qi in her body was no small matter. Among the crowd, the group of young disciples from Xinjiang Gate felt the aura on Ouyang Jinwei's body from afar and secretly changed color. Their expressions also became serious. Feeling the aura on Ouyang Jinwei's body, Su Yi's expression was still calm, as usual, but the Yuan Qi in his body was also slowly circulating. Use your full strength, or you'll be miserable. Of course, you're destined to regret today's result for the rest of your life. Looking at Su Yi, Ouyang Jinwei said coldly. Looking at Ouyang Jinwei, Su Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. His eyes stared unscrupulously at her exquisite figure and the towering cleavage in front of her chest. A wicked smile appeared on his face as he said, "It seems that you can't wait to become my concubine. Then cut the crap and make your move." Ouyang Jinwei's cold smile froze on her beautiful face. The chill in her eyes had completely climbed up, and her faint golden eyes were icy cold. At this moment, everyone could feel that Ouyang Jinwei had been thoroughly enraged, and the chill in her eyes had reached its peak. Then so be it. You are courting death. Don't blame others. Her cold words were mixed with killing intent. As soon as Ouyang Jinwei finished speaking, a golden light enveloped her body. Her dress fluttered, and the Yuan Qi under her feet swept out, accompanied by a storm-like golden tide that swept toward Su Yi. It was too fast. Ouyang Jinwei was completely enraged. Her eyes were dyed with golden light, and she instantly arrived in front of Su Yi. That vast and sharp aura of desolation and sharpness crushed down, causing the surroundings of this square to also have the appearance of a surging storm. With a flick of her wrist, Ouyang Jinwei sent out a hand seal. Her slender fingers glowed, and golden light filled the air. Carrying a murderous and sharp aura, she sent it directly towards Su Yi. So strong. This sudden change caused the tense atmosphere to completely explode. That terrifying murderous aura made many people outside the square shudder in fear, and they couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Many experts also had admiration in their eyes. Ouyang Jinwei's move made them realize that she was indeed worthy of being an outstanding disciple of the Sacred Mountain. As the hand seal slammed down, golden light swept out, sharp and murderous. The hand seal expanded in front of Su Yi's eyes at an incomparably fast speed, causing Su Yi's eyes to twitch slightly. Setting aside the sacred mountain, Ouyang Jinwei was indeed worthy of being an outstanding direct disciple of the sacred mountain. She had her own extraordinary strength, but among those of the same generation, Su Yi had never been defeated. Along the way, he had experienced many hardships. How many times had he been tempered by life and death situations? And how many times had he been tempered by despair? Su Yi had seen this kind of scene many times. He had even fought with Emperor Realm Masters before. Although he had relied on external forces, he had also faced them personally. Su Yi had long been prepared. The golden hand seal slammed down, and in the blink of an eye, Su Yi's Yuan Qi rushed out from under his feet, and his figure quickly stepped to the left. In an instant, Su Yi's entire body turned into an arc and dodged to the side of the palm print. Under many fearful gazes, Su Yi seemed to be in a dangerous situation, but he had also narrowly avoided this terrifying attack. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.